Chapter 2172. You're such a disgrace. What's going on? Song Zhanghua was exasperated and wanted to slap her a few more times. One slap was not enough to appease his anger, but looking at her, he pitied her. However, on second thought, Jiang Qiming said that she had returned to the capital, but she was carrying a child in her stomach. How could an unmarried girl from a prestigious family get pregnant before marriage? Most importantly, they still didn't know whose child this child belonged to. He did not know what this bastard daughter was thinking. She went missing for no reason and came back pregnant. Did she think that his life was not short enough and wanted to anger him to death? He was the mayor. Although he doted on his children, he had always been strict in educating them. If such a thing were to spread, not only would it be offensive to public morals, but it would also affect his status. He was going to run for re-election next year, and he was aiming for a high position. Now, she had inexplicably caused him to lose his life. How could he smooth things over? Song Yunxi did not dare to interrupt, but Jiang Qiming could not help but feel sorry for her daughter when she saw that the situation was getting out of hand. "Zhanghua, let's talk this out," she said in an exasperated tone. "Shut up." Song Zhanghua was already filled with anger, and Jiang Qiming's recklessness was undoubtedly an act of ignorance. He turned around and did not care that there were outsiders present. He reprimanded her fiercely, "If you keep talking, I'll teach you a lesson too. You even said let's talk things over. If you hadn't spoiled her and let her do whatever she wanted, would she have done such a ridiculous thing?" Jiang Qiming's eyes reddened at his words. She was already worried to begin with, and now that she was reprimanded in front of outsiders, she felt that she had lost all face. She covered her face sadly and turned to the side. When Song Yunxi saw this, she also blamed Jiang Qiming for being nosy. Seeing that her daughter was being reprimanded by Song Zhanghua, she felt sorry for her and immediately comforted her in a low voice. "Mom, we're outside. You're a woman, so don't interrupt. You have to give Dad face. Don't interrupt what your father is saying. What's the matter? Can't we talk at home? Aren't you making things difficult for Dad?" When Jiang Qiming heard this, she could only suppress the grievance and sadness in her heart. She nodded helplessly, but her eyes were wet. When Song Enya saw how angry her father was, she cried even louder in fear and trepidation. She had always been in awe of Song Zhanghua. This father of hers was usually gentle, but once he got angry, he was extremely terrifying. "What right do you have to cry here? Tell me, how did the child in your stomach come to be?" At such a young age, she didn't have any self-respect at all. She was pregnant, and all she knew was to cry when she came back. "Now you look so pitiful. What were you doing before?" Song Enya's eyes became even more swollen after the stern reprimand. From the beginning to the end, Song Zhanghua did not even look Mu Yaja in the eye. Mu Yaja sneered inwardly. Was this Song Zhanghua very powerful? When he was still the heir of the Mu family, whenever he saw him, no matter how big the matter was, he would always greet him warmly. Chapter 2173. Mu Yaja was not a pushover. Since Song Zhanghua was so harsh, he could not be bothered to smooth things over for him. In front of everyone, he said in an extremely humiliating tone, "I don't know what's wrong with your daughter. She stole my sperm from a sperm bank and secretly ran overseas to undergo IVF. She got pregnant with a child." Song Zhanghua's eyes widened when he heard this. "What?" Jiang Qiming, who was standing at the side, also widened her eyes in disbelief. Song Yunxi, on the other hand, glared at his niece in surprise. "What? This girl actually did such a thing? She stole someone else's sperm and ran overseas to undergo IVF? Is she crazy?" Belatedly, Song Yunxi suddenly realized that when Song Enya went missing earlier, a sum of money had disappeared from his account. The 8-figure sum of money was not allowed to be used. It was left in his hands by his father to manage. Could she have taken this sum of money and used it to do such a ridiculous thing? Bribing a sperm bank and a prostitute, then running overseas to undergo IVF? She must have been possessed by a demon. Song Yunxi bit her lip. At this point, his father had not noticed this matter, so he did not mention it. His father had never asked about this sum of money, but now, he did not dare to say it. If he said that this sum of money had been used by Song Enya, his father would be so angry that he would cripple her. If that happened, Song Enya and the child in her stomach would not be able to keep their lives. At this thought, Song Yunshi broke out in a cold sweat. She could not help but feel worried for Song Enya. Song Enya covered her face in a daze as she sobbed. The side of her ear that had been hit was buzzing, so she could not hear anything at all. She could only vaguely see Song Zhengguo's increasingly angry face, which was terrifying to the extreme. IVF. He. She probably wanted to steal my sperm and get pregnant with my child so that she could blackmail me into marrying her. She stole the wrong sperm, so I didn't manage to conceive a child. Instead, I got pregnant with Mu Yancheng's child. Mu Yaja used the harshest words to humiliate Song Zhengguo. Song Zhengguo's body swayed, and his face almost fell. His gaze was gloomy and his expression was complicated. Then, he clenched his fists. Impossible. To protect his reputation, he denied it and vowed, although my daughter is often muddle-headed, she wouldn't do such a ridiculous thing. Whether he did it or not, won't it be clear when we go home and ask? Mu Yaja sneered again. She knew that I had stepped down as the patriarch, but she still came to me. Not only did she twist words and force logic, but she also confidently asked my wife to abdicate her position. She even asked me to marry her and return to the Mu family to continue to wield the power. She even said that she would use all the power of her mother's family to support me. How ridiculous. Brother Mu. Song Enya could not listen to it anymore. She covered her ears and screamed. It was extremely ear-piercing. With tears in her eyes, she begged pitifully, "Stop talking. Stop talking. Just take it that he took pity on her and did not force her into a corner. All right, I won't talk about it anymore. However, don't blame me for this. Even if the child in your stomach is mine, I will never acknowledge it. I won't acknowledge my child just because it's someone else's child." These words were undoubtedly the last bit of Song Zhengguo's face. Chapter 2174. Song Zhengguo sucked in a deep breath of cold air. After contemplating the cold expression on Mu Yaja's face for a long time, he suppressed his indignation and finally spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Hearing Mu Yaja's frosty reply, Song Zhengguo had nowhere to vent his anger. This lad can't possibly be lying. Still, no matter what, he found it hard to believe that his precious daughter would actually say such disgraceful word. Using her maternal family's influence. Supporting Mu Yaja in his bid to become the family head again. Using her warm face to stick to his cold butt. As a result, his status as the mayor of the city had been degraded. This woman had been doted on and protected since she was young, but in the end, she was blinded by so-called love when she grew up. Besides, was Mu Yaja someone she should love? She was so blinded by her so-called incestuous love that she sided with an outsider and wanted to use her family's influence at all costs to help Mu Yaja make a comeback. The point was, did he care? He did not even care. It was not as if Song Zhengguo had not arranged a marriage for his daughter before. What kind of high official and noble family could not find a match for a madwoman like her? Alas, she did not want any of them and wanted to wholeheartedly revolve around an iceberg. This foolish daughter of his, did she not realize that she was like a moth flying toward a flame? He really wanted to wake her up with a loud scolding and let her see how ruthless the man she loved was to her. In front of so many people, he did not care about her dignity at all and made her lose face as well. The more Song Zhengguo thought about it, the more infuriated he felt. He really wanted to slap his niece a few more times, but when he saw her bleak and dejected expression, as well as her eyes staring blankly at her knees, he could not help but feel that she was extremely pitiful. He could not bear to see her like this, so he swallowed the vicious words that were about to come out of his mouth. Forget it. He suppressed his displeasure, but he still had to maintain his poise and bearing. Hence, he waved his hand and ordered, "Let's go home." Song Enya's eyes widened when she heard her father instructing, "Yunshi, help your sister into the car and go home." Upon hearing this, Song Enya burst into tears again. Song Zhengguo immediately scolded, "What are you crying for? I'm too ashamed to go back." She shook her head in despair and sorrow. For the sake of this plan, she had put in all her effort and even sacrificed her family's interests, all for a petty and far-fetched reason to stay by his side. It didn't matter if he couldn't see the light, as long as he could stay by her side. But now, she had seen Mu Yaja's attitude towards her with her own eyes. It could be said that she had completely given up. He had completely given up on Chu Yang. Originally, she was unwilling to give up on this man. She had tried her best to get closer to him again and again, but now, she realized that everything she had done was in vain. At this moment, she no longer had any thoughts about him. The moth threw itself into the fire without hesitation and was burned to ashes in the end, dying a tragic death. And now, wasn't she just like that moth, burned and scarred by the raging flames? She no longer had the face to return to that home. I can't go back. Everything can't go back. The past with Brother Mu and everything with the Song family can't go back. Chapter 2175. Song Enya's mental breakdown broke Jiang Chimeng's heart. She walked up to her and hugged her daughter as tears streamed down her cheeks. Mom doesn't blame you. It's Mom's fault. It's Mom's fault. If I hadn't spoiled you so much, you wouldn't have done such a foolish thing. It's the father's fault for not teaching you well. It's not your fault that I didn't teach you well. Her words were deliberately meant for Song Zhenghua. The reason why she said this was mainly because she did not want him to put all the blame on Song Enya. She was already covered in scars this time. If she were to return home and suffer another blow, she was really afraid that she would lose her daughter forever. As a mother, how could she not see her daughter's current state? She was broken down, hopeless, and wandering on the edge of darkness. If she were to return home, even if Song Zhenghua were to say something harsh, it would be the straw that broke her back. There was another hidden meaning in her words, and it was for Song Zhenghua's benefit. If not for him doting on Song Enya so much when she was young, she wouldn't be so childish and immature. Song Zhenghua's face turned red instantly. He muttered a few words but did not say anything harsh. What nonsense are you saying? If you don't go home, where else can you go? Go back. Song Zhenghua paused and sighed helplessly. Dad doesn't blame you anymore. As he said this, he reached out his large palm and gently patted Song Enya's head as a form of consolation. Song Enya started bawling her eyes out like a spoiled child. At the entrance of the cafe, after Song Yunxi and Jiang Chimeng helped Song Enya into the car, Song Zhenghua paid the bill and politely apologized to the waiters and thanked them. Mu Yaja and Yun Shusha were about to leave when Song Zhenghua called out to him. Yaja. Mu Yaja turned around and saw Song Zhenghua looking at him with a serious face. He said slowly, I have something to talk to you about. As he said this, he glanced at Yun Shusha as a form of avoidance. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile as he turned to look at Yun Shusha. Wait for me in the car, okay? Good. I will wait for you. Yun Shusha took the car keys and got in the car without consulting anyone. Song Zhenghua got into another car with him. As soon as the door was closed, Mu Yaja's face turned cold. She didn't even need to think about what she wanted to say to him behind closed doors. Dirty linen should not be aired in public. Song Zhenghua, this sanctimonious but cunning old man, must want to discuss some conditions with him. Song Zhenghua sized him up a few times, but he was secretly shocked. As for this kid, he was extremely shocked when he heard the news of his resignation the night before yesterday. This was too sudden. What was even more unexpected was that this kid, who had always been a black-bellied ambitious person, actually took the initiative to give up the position of the Mujio's patriarch. He really could not figure it out. However, at this moment, he looked at the man in front of him, who was leisurely leaning against the window with a cold expression. Even if he was no longer the glorious head of the family, it could not diminish the emperor's aura that he constantly exuded. Song Zhenghua said slowly, I heard that you resigned from the position of the family head. Heard? Chapter 2176. Song Zhenghua must have found out that he was no longer the head of the Mu family. However, what he did not find out was, even if he had left the Mu family, it was only temporary. Song Zhenghua was stunned. Since Mu Yaja had taken the initiative to shed all pretense of cordiality, he did not bother with pleasantries and went straight to the point. My daughter's situation this time is all thanks to you. However, I'm a reasonable person. She only has herself to blame for ending up in such a state. On account of your sibling relationship with Jiang Chimeng, I won't pursue this matter with you. In other words, he was implying that he and Song Enya were equally responsible for this matter after leaving the Mu family and falling into dire straits. On account of their relationship, he would not take nothing from him. His words and attitude were all high and mighty. However, Mu Yaja did not fall for it. He sneered and said, Song Zhanghua, don't think that I'm a pitiful worm that can be trampled on by anyone just because I'm no longer the head of the Mu family. The Mu family has been in power for so long, and the power in its hands is definitely not the same as the Mu family's. The fact that I'm able to reach such a stage and now that I'm giving it all up, it can only mean that I don't care about all of this. To put it bluntly, I don't need you to deliberately show mercy and show mercy. Let me give you a piece of advice, don't put yourself on such a high pedestal. I'm not the one who caused your daughter to end up like this. To put it bluntly, your daughter's current state is troubling me. When Enya was young, I used to think that she was obedient and lovely, but now, she makes me feel disgusted and disgusted. His words gave Song Zhanghua a wake-up call. How could that be? Even if Mu Yaja was no longer the head of the Mu family, he was definitely not a pitiful worm that could be trampled on by others. After all, he had offended many enemies when he was still in power. If he did not have absolute confidence, he would not have stepped down from his position and put himself in a passive position. This could only mean that this fellow still had a few trump cards that he had yet to play. At this thought, Song Zhanghua's arrogance and haughtiness finally subsided a little. He nodded and smiled. All right. It's my fault. I was too harsh with my words. Mu Yaja coldly snorted, his expression arrogant. When Song Zhanghua saw this, he couldn't help but be glad that he had 2 holes in his nostrils. If he didn't have these 2 holes, he would definitely be angered to the point of hypoxia. He gritted his teeth and suppressed his urge. Suddenly, he made a request. Yaja, there's something you must promise me. No matter what Enya has done to bother you, I will definitely keep an eye on her in the future and never let her do such foolish things again. However, regarding today's matter, as the saying goes, don't wash your dirty linen in public. Enya got pregnant out of wedlock and secretly went abroad for artificial insemination. Keep it a secret for now and don't spread the news. Until I come up with a plan, I hope you will keep your mouth shut. Oh! Mu Yaja had long expected such a request from him. Song Zhanghua was a man who cared a lot about his reputation. Given his niece's behavior, it was nothing more than a disgrace to the family's reputation. If she alarmed that powerful old man in the Song family, he would most likely chase her out in a fit of rage. Chapter 2177. Although Song Zhanghua scolded Song Enya harshly on the surface, deep down, he was still concerned about his daughter's reputation. Perhaps, he was more concerned about his own reputation. You want me to keep your secret? He nodded guiltily. Sure, but I have a condition. A condition? Song Zhanghua's face lit up with joy. It was naturally a good thing that he was willing to raise a condition. He was just afraid that his attitude would be firm and leave no room for negotiation. If he raised a condition, there would naturally be room for negotiation. Fine. Tell me, what is it? If you ask someone to keep a secret, you'll have to pay hush money, right? What do you think of 10 million yuan? Mu Yaja could always think of an extreme way to disgust others. Song Zhanghua was so disgusted that his eyeballs almost popped out. 10 million yuan? Where was he going to get such a sum of money? Although he was in a high position and had trusted aides around him in business, he could not have any assets under his name, but there were people in his family who took resources from him to invest. However, he really did not know where he could get 10 million yuan in such a short time. Although he was not as incorruptible as everyone praised him, he was definitely not that corrupt to the point where he could casually take out so much money. So much money. He sighed with a conflicted expression. You can't afford it. Mu Yaja smiled, knowing that he could not afford it. It's fine. If you can't afford 10 million yuan, you can use something else. What do you mean? I heard that the land in Xincheng will be auctioned off by you soon. Song Zhanghua's face froze when he heard Mu Yaja's words. Where did he find out about such a confidential matter? While he was still in a daze, Mu Yaja made an exorbitant demand. You should have the right to decide the ownership of that land before the auction. Therefore, I want that piece of land. As soon as he finished speaking, Song Zhanghua immediately rejected, impossible. Once this resort was completed, it would mean that it would be a project with considerable profits. He did indeed have the right to decide the ownership of this piece of land, but at the moment, even though there was no investment, once this piece of land was auctioned, it would be as high as a few hundred million. That would be more than 10 million. Mu Yaja directly asked him for this piece of land. This was undoubtedly cutting off his flesh. Song Zhanghua gritted his teeth and looked at him as if he was looking at a devil. He resolutely refused. I can't let you have this land. You want 10 million? Sure. Give me a month, and I'll give it to you. 1 month. I can't wait any longer. Either you give me 10 million now, or you give me that piece of land. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Mu Yaja suddenly smiled deeply. If you don't tell me, how would I not know? I still have some things that you might be interested in. If you are willing to part with it, I will give you face. Something that he was interested in? Song Zhanghua stood rooted to the ground. Could it be the evidence of those unspeakable things that he had done? Once he thought of this, he started to feel uneasy. This fellow, how could he be so shrewd? He had actually managed to get his hands on the evidence of his crimes without anyone noticing. Furthermore, he was holding it tightly in his hands. Now, wasn't this his biggest bargaining chip? Chapter 2178. Haha. But I knew you'd reject it. Forget it, this deal doesn't count. Mu Yaja suddenly added, although I'm no longer the head of the Mu family, I still have Huanyu's shares in my hands. It's not a problem for me to create a press release overnight. The mayor's daughter went against ethics and got pregnant before marriage. Is this headline enough? That one sentence was enough to make Song Zhanghua shudder in fear. Mu Yaja smiled wickedly and pretended to get up. Song Zhanghua immediately grabbed him. You can't do that. Do you have the heart to destroy Enya with your own hands? Mu Yaja asked calmly, what's there to not have the heart to do? The corners of Song Zhanggua's eyes twitched fiercely. Looking at his disdainful expression, he was about to explode. However, when he turned his head and saw his disappointing daughter sitting in the other car, he suppressed the displeasure in his heart and asked patiently, when do you want it? Tomorrow. It's too rushed. I might not be able to make it. Mu Yaja smiled coldly. My patience is limited. I'll only give you 3 days. Either give me $10 million or transfer the ownership of that land under my name. After that, he waved Song Zhanggua's hand away expressionlessly and got out of the car. Song Zhanghua was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He felt as if his flesh was being sliced apart by this fellow. In just a few minutes, a few $100 million worth of land was in his pocket. How could he not be angry? On the way back, Yun Shusha asked curiously why Song Zhanghua had called him over. Mu Yaja told her everything about their conversation. Yun Shusha was so shocked that she couldn't close her mouth. Isn't this blackmail? She spat out, flabbergasted. Mu Yaja argued, I got this land based on my own abilities. It has nothing to do with blackmail. Yun Shusha stuck out her tongue. It would be strange if it wasn't blackmail. However, Mu Yaja was also capable. He targeted Song Zhanggua's weakness. If the scandal of Song Enya's premarital pregnancy was exposed, it would have a deep impact on Song Zhanggua's future. On one hand, it was a project worth hundreds of millions. On the other hand, it was his more than 10 years of career. After thinking about it, Song Zhanghua naturally knew how to weigh the pros and cons and could only compromise. Although this was only one step of compromise, this deal was a huge loss. Regardless of whether Song Zhanghua gave him 10 million yuan in the end or gave him that piece of land, it would be a solution to his desperate situation. Now, the Xingyu Financial Group was short of funds. Without capital investment, many projects had stopped operating, and the company was losing money every minute. Perhaps, Mu Yaja did not care about such a small loss. But if they stagnated, they would only grow. That was why he did not stop Song Enya from going overseas for IVF. He wanted to have a backup plan in case of an emergency. Yun Shusha's mouth twitched. This man was far more scheming than she had imagined. To think that he had already prepared a contingency plan and leeway for the future predicament so long ago. It could only be said that this man's ambition had always been unimaginable. Thinking about it, Song Zhanghua must be feeling very depressed on his way home, right? Chapter 2179. Yun Shusha suddenly found it rather interesting. She did not expect that after going around in circles, he would actually gain a lot of benefits from it. Sometimes, this man was quite evil. When he pampered someone, he did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. However, if he hardened his heart to trick someone, that person would probably lose all their temper. On the other end, in the car, Song Yunshi, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, kept her head lowered and tactfully kept quiet. In the back seat, Jiang Chimeng hugged her daughter tenderly and kept comforting her back. Song Zhanghua, who was sitting beside her, was so angry that his face was ashen. His pair of fierce and sharp eyes stared straight ahead, and his whole person exuded an aura of an impending storm. The temporary silence in the car was more like the calm before the storm. Jiang Chimeng carefully glanced at Song Zhanggua's side profile. In fact, she really wanted to know what the two of them were talking about that caused Song Zhanggua's expression to be so unsightly. However, due to his unsightly expression, she could not muster up the courage to ask. However, after a long silence, she finally could not hold it in anymore. After weighing the pros and cons, she cautiously asked, "What did you and Yaja talk about? You're not allowed to mention that jerk's name in front of me again." Song Zhanghua interrupted her in a thunderous rage. Jiang Chimeng was shocked by his terrifying tone. She stared at him with widened eyes, seemingly unable to understand where his anger came from. However, seeing how angry he was, she did not dare to pursue the matter and tactfully kept her mouth shut. However, just because she did not ask, it did not mean that he would not talk about it anymore. He was full of anger and could not find a place to vent it. Her question naturally gave him an opportunity to vent. She saw him turn his flushed face abruptly, stared into her eyes, and roared furiously, "That good brother of yours is really arrogant. I tried my best to persuade him to keep his mouth shut about Enya's matter on account of our family's many years of friendship. Guess what he said, though?" Jiang Chimeng shook her head blankly and asked in surprise, "What did he say?" At the mention of Mu Yaja, Song Enya, who was originally in a daze, finally regained some vitality. Her empty eyes also regained some focus. Song Yunshi, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, also pricked up her ears curiously. He said that if you want him to keep the secret, you have to give him a sum of hush money. The moment Song Zhanghua finished speaking, Jiang Chimeng shook her head in disbelief. "Impossible. Yaja is never that kind of person. Haha. You underestimate him too much. Now, he's no longer the Mu Jia's lord, he's relieved of his heavy responsibility. What's the difference between him and a waste? Now, because of your disappointing daughter, he has a chance to make a fuss." "What did he say?" "He said he wanted me to give him 10 million. Otherwise, he would use the media outlets under him to publicize this matter. He really had a good plan. I have no choice but to give you the money, but he was really capable of saying 10 million. Don't you think that this kid is asking for too much?" Chapter 2180. How can we come up with 10 million yuan in such a short time? Jiang Chimeng muttered anxiously. At the same time, she was extremely disappointed in Mu Yaja. How could this brat make such a shocking request? 10 million yuan. Even Song Yunshi was dumbfounded. Song Enya, on the other hand, could not help but shudder when she heard this. Why did Brother Mu suddenly become so ruthless? Could it be that he really did not have any leeway for her? 10 million yuan, she suddenly felt suffocated. Before she left the country, she had secretly transferred a sum of money from Song Yunshi's bank account. That sum of money was still empty like a black hole. If she had not done such a foolish thing, she would still be able to fork out 10 million yuan. However, if she had not staked everything on this one throw and allowed that man to take advantage of her, the entire Song family would not be in such a passive state now. Does Dad know about this? Song Enya's face turned ashen. She was worried that if her father found out that she had moved this sum of money and squandered it all for the sake of IVF, would he be so angry that he would strangle her to death? At the thought of this, Song Enya trembled in fear. Jiang Chimeng's mind was full of this matter, so she did not notice her daughter's abnormality for a while. She only comforted her, "Zhanghua, Don't worry. I'll talk to him later. On account of our sibling relationship, he won't be so ruthless. Forget it. Song Zhanghua snorted disdainfully. He has nothing now. What are you talking to him about? Sibling relationship. I think this lad has already fallen into the devil's path. He doesn't want to be the family head and actually gives up everything for a woman. Now, you're still hoping that he will acknowledge you as his sister. He doesn't care about his family now. If you talk to him, you'll only fall into his trap. After a pause, he snorted coldly with a gloomy gaze. We can choose not to give him the 10 million yuan, but he has another condition. I have a piece of golden land in my hands now, and he wants me to use my authority to give it to him for free. When Song Yunshi heard this, she immediately asked nervously, "Is it the land in the new city?" Song Zhanghua pulled a long face and didn't say anything. Song Yunshi's heart skipped a beat. Seeing that her father didn't reject it immediately, she thought that Mu Yaja must have made such a request. Tears streamed down Song Enya's face at once. She knew very well that if her father were to give this piece of land to brother Mu for free, it would not be a matter of 10 million yuan. This piece of land was priceless. It would bring about a series of unprecedented economic benefits, and the far-reaching impact of this bidding case on his father's position was immeasurable. If everything went smoothly, it would be an unimaginable help to her father in the future. Song Yunshi asked worriedly, "Dad, are you really going to cede this land to him? What else can we do? Could it be that he could only watch as the Song family's scandal was blown all over the city by this brat? I can't afford to lose face, and neither can the Song family. Your grandfather is already old, so he can't afford to lose face." Mu Yaja knew how to grasp a person's weakness. Chapter 2181. Song Zhanghua suddenly closed his eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. However, he suddenly thought of something and opened his eyelids. He looked at Song Yunshi with bright eyes and asked, "Didn't I ask you to temporarily keep a bank account for me?" Before he could finish his words, Song Yunshi's mind went blank with a bang. Even Song Enya's face turned ghastly pale at once. Song Zhanghua did not notice the tacit change on the siblings' faces at all. He was focused on investigating the money in the bank account. He recalled for a moment and said in a deep voice, "I remember that there's more than 20 million in that account." Like a drowning man adrift at sea, he leaned forward and asked covetously, "Hurry up and write a check tomorrow. Do it early in the morning." "Dad," Song Yunshi lowered her head with a pale face, not daring to make a sound. Her conflicted expression seemed to indicate that she was feeling extremely guilty and wanted to hide something in a hurry, but she could not say a word for a long time. Song Enya sized up Song Yunshi and furrowed her brows worriedly. However, she gripped her skirt uneasily and bit her red lips tightly. She bit so hard that her originally pale lips were filled with blood, as if they were about to bleed. Song Zhanghua, on the other hand, was extremely sharp. He could tell at a glance that Song Yunshi seemed to be feeling guilty about something and could not help but be a little suspicious. "Where did that money go? Don't tell me that I asked you to keep it, and you squandered it on your own." Song Zhanghua could not help but suspect in this direction. His voice became increasingly gloomy and sharp, and there was a sense of suffocation in it. Song Yunshi clenched her fists but did not say a word. He had been carefully managing this account, but the only oversight was fatal. He had guarded against everyone but not the mole. Song Enya, on the other hand, was the mole in the family. Song Enya sized up Song Yunshi's conflicted expression. She knew that Yunshi was protecting her and was unwilling to betray her. Therefore, just as Song Zhanghua was about to fly into a rage, she suddenly raised her head without hesitation and grabbed his arm. She made up her mind and confessed through gritted teeth, It's me." Song Zhanghua was stunned for a moment before he exclaimed in unison, "What? I misappropriated that sum of money." Song Enya broke down and yelled loudly. She hugged her head tightly, almost desperately revealing the truth. I want to carry out my plan, so I need a sum of money. Artificial insemination requires a lot of capital. Plus, to get those things, we need to sacrifice a lot of money. So I came up with the idea of money. I originally thought that this plan was foolproof and that I could fill in the gap very quickly, but I miscalculated. Her words were enough to plunge Song Zhanghua into an incomparably dark state. He felt the world spinning around him. When he came back to his senses, he shouted in disbelief, "Song Enya, are you crazy?" His thunderous voice even frightened the driver. His wrist trembled and he almost lost control of the car. Chapter 2182. Song Zhanghua was enraged. "How dare you? How dare you embezzle that sum of money? Don't you know that it's the Gong funds?" "Dad." Tears streamed down Song Enya's face as she begged in regret. "It's all my fault. I know my mistake now. If you hate me, you can scold me or hit me. I'll have no regrets even if you beat me to death. Anyway, I don't want to live anymore. I've humiliated you, Mommy, and the entire family. Why don't you strangle me to death? I know I'm wrong, sob sob sob." She started bawling her eyes out. Song Zhanghua gritted his teeth in anger. Seeing his niece in such a state, he really raised his hand high to slap her. Jiang Chimeng was quick to react. She shielded her daughter in her arms and stopped her in time. She broke down and said, "Zhanghua, calm down, calm down. How can I calm down? To have such an unfilial daughter, I can't. I can't. What's done is done. There's no point in saying all this. Enya already knows her mistake. I believe that she really knows her mistake and won't do such a foolish thing again. Just this once. Give her one last chance, okay?" She pleaded bitterly as she hugged her daughter tightly and curled up into a ball. Song Zhanghua looked at them in a daze. Suddenly, he sneered and spat out a few words with trembling lips. "Great. You two are connected by heart. You've made me inhumane, haven't you?" Jiang Chimeng was so frightened that she dared not speak. With trembling hands, Song Zhanghua fished out a pack of cigarettes. Just as he was about to light one up and take a few puffs to relieve his anger, he glanced at the pair of mother and daughter, who were huddled together pitifully. At the thought of Song Enya, who was not even a month old yet, he suddenly felt frustrated and threw the pack of cigarettes away. With a loud smack, the pack of cigarettes hit the windshield and slid down the dashboard before falling to the ground. Song Zhanghua covered his face in despair and lowered his body. His voice was hoarse. "Enya, you will kill Daddy like this, do you know that?" Jiang Chimeng was completely stunned. Song Yunshi was also stunned. All along, her father had been indomitable and high-spirited in front of them, but now, because of Song Enya, he actually broke down and shed tears in front of them for the first time in his life. Song Enya was so scared that she did not even dare to breathe when she saw this. She felt that she had caused her father to suffer, but now that she was a sinner, there was no way she could comfort him. She could only shrink to one side, Song Yunshi's heartache for herself and her father's heart. At the same time, her hatred for Mu Yaja deepened. It could be said that the deeper the love was, the deeper the hatred was. Her love for Mu Yaja had turned into bone-deep hatred at this moment. She hugged her shoulders and cried out in pain and helplessness, "Dad, I'm sorry. I really know I was wrong. I'll listen to whatever you say in the future." She did not ask for Song Zhanghua's forgiveness. She only hoped that she would not implicate her father no matter what the price was. Song Zhanghua did not make a sound as tears fell silently. He did not say a word along the way. It was obvious that his heart was heavy, so Jiang Chimeng did not dare to disturb him. Chapter 2183. She was in a mess, especially her dress, which was drenched in milk. She had to change her clothes and think about the rest later. After Song Zhanghua calmed down, he suddenly said, "Song Enya is pregnant with Mu Yanqing's child, right?" Jiang Chimeng and Song Yunshi looked at each other and nodded. Now that Song Enya was no longer around, Song Zhanghua lit a cigarette and took a few puffs. After a long while, he said in a deep voice, "Let's abort the child while it's still young and hasn't formed." Jiang Chimeng was a little surprised by his decision. "Abort it? What else can we do?" Song Zhanghua snorted in annoyance. "Don't tell me we're going to give birth to this illegitimate child." Song Yunshi asked worriedly, "Enya? Will Enya be willing? Since it's come to this, it's not up to her to decide on this matter. Just now, she promised me in the car that she'd listen to me on this matter. This child can't be kept. She's still unmarried. If she gives birth to this child, we won't let others make a fool of the Song family. Before the news gets out, I'll make some arrangements and find a reliable big hospital to perform an operation to abort the child. Song Zhengguo's tone was so calm that it was almost cruel. At first glance, it sounded very ruthless. However, only Song Yunxi could tell that her father's tone was filled with restraint and regret. He was enduring his heartache and forcing himself to be so resolute. Indeed, if this child was kept, not only would it harm Enya, but it would also implicate the entire family's reputation. This was a step that could not be taken. I don't think we have to abort this child, right? Jiang Qimeng suddenly said. Song Zhengguo looked at her, but unexpectedly, he did not refute her words. Instead, he asked, then, in your opinion, what should we do with this child? Jiang Qimeng was a little surprised. In the past, she had never had a say in this family. However, now that Song Zhengguo was actually asking for her opinion, she felt a little better. I think that having Mu Yaja's child in her stomach is better than having Mu Yaja's child. Zhengguo, think about it. Now, Mu Yaja has already stepped down from his position as the head of the Mu family. I heard that he has fallen out with the Mu family. It's impossible for him to return to the Mu family. In your words, I have nothing left. However, Mu Yangcheng was different. He also has some status in the Mu Jiao. Although he is not the Mu Jiao's patriarch, if he marries Enya, with the power of the Song family, it won't be difficult for him to become the patriarch. Perhaps, he could talk to him about this matter and see what his intentions were. After all, it's his blessing that our family's Enya is compatible with him. He won't necessarily lose out. If the two families could form a marriage alliance, then when Enya's child was born, it could be said that the mother's status would rise because of her son. Perhaps, in the future, Enya can become the Mu Jiao's mistress. The power of the two families balanced each other and supported each other. It could be said that both sides were seeking benefits. Mu Yangcheng is a sensible child. If the situation is beneficial to him, he will definitely accept it. Song Zhengguo suddenly sneered disapprovingly. Chapter 2184. Do you want me to bluntly say that this lass stole the sperm bank in order to get pregnant with Yaja's child? In the end, she made a huge mistake and ended up with his sperm. Now, she's pregnant with his child due to a freak combination of factors. Isn't this a fantasy? What is Mu Yangcheng thinking about the Song family? Do you think I haven't embarrassed myself enough? Jiang Qimeng hesitated to speak, but Song Zhengguo continued, besides, how can you be sure that Enya is pregnant with Mu Yancheng's child? What if the child isn't Mu Yaja's? Mu Yancheng's personality isn't as calm as Mu Yaja's. If that happens, won't things get even uglier? Jiang Qimeng smiled. Zhengguo, don't worry about this. Before that, for insurance, I'll think of a way to secretly do another paternity test. If it's confirmed to be Mu Yancheng's child, then everyone will be happy. If it's not, then according to your opinion, let's abort the child. Song Yunxi was conflicted. Is that okay? It seems like my sister is the one who threw herself at him. Song Zhengguo scoffed. Do you think your mother and I want to do this? If Enya didn't ruin herself and get pregnant for no reason, would we be in such a passive position? Song Yunxi fell silent guiltily. This suggestion of yours is not impossible. According to the news, the second in charge of the Mu family seems to have the intention of supporting Mu Yangcheng. However, that old man has been busy with the company's affairs recently. After that rascal stepped down, the entire Mu group is in a mess. At this time, I'm afraid he's bitterly cleaning up the mess. I wonder how the Mu group will develop in the future. Does Mu Yangcheng have the ability to take on such a heavy responsibility? However, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. No matter how bad the Mu group is, it's still the richest family in the capital. Yangcheng and Enya are well matched in terms of social status. It's not a loss. Song Zhengguo pondered for a moment and narrowed his eyes. I'm just afraid that we'll make the wrong bet and lose both the woman and the money. Jiang Qimeng added, I've interacted with Yangcheng a few times. My impression of him is that he's a humble and responsible person. He might not be as capable as Yaja, but he had a simple personality and was not as shrewd and unpredictable as Yaja. He was quite easy to control. If Enya is betrothed to him, It will be a more optimistic situation for us. The three of them suddenly fell silent. Amidst the dead silence, Song Enya changed into a new set of clothes and sat back on the sofa. Perhaps it was because Jiang Chiming had comforted her for a long time on the way home. Her emotions finally stabilized and her complexion looked better. When she went downstairs just now, she stood in the distance for a while, so she heard some of their conversation. She really did not expect that the child in her stomach would be Mu Yanqing's. But now that things had come to this, she was already disheartened. No matter what Song Zhanghua suggested to her, she would not put up any resistance. Because once the heart died, it would truly die. As for her future, she did not have any expectations. She might as well go with the flow and let them arrange it. After all, she was the one who had caused this disaster. She should be responsible for it. She no longer had any thoughts about who she would marry or who she would marry. Chapter 2185. Actually, I'm not sure who the father of the child in my stomach is. Anyway, I'll listen to all of your arrangement. Song Enya stood her ground and expressed her opinion timidly. Seeing that she was so cooperative, Jiang Chiming was overjoyed. Good. Enya, you're finally a little more sensible. Don't worry, Mommy won't let you suffer. Okay, Song Zhanghua suddenly said, it's decided for now. Tomorrow, find an opportunity to do a paternity test to see if the child is Mu Yanqing's. We'll discuss other matters after we get the result. Okay. Everyone reached a consensus. The next day, Mu Yanqing did not receive any calls from Meng Qingxue the entire day. Not to mention a call, he did not even receive a text message. Before he left last night, he had already made his stand clear and said that if Meng Qingxue was sensible, she would call to cater to him and agree to his arrangements. However, he did not receive any reply from Meng Qingxue until evening. He was instantly furious. He really couldn't figure out what this woman's motive was. Could it be that for a woman like her, glory and wealth were her lifelong pursuits? He wanted to give her glory and wealth. He would also allow her to give birth to the child. After the child was born, as the child's father, he would also bear the responsibility of raising and nurturing the child. If the child was well-groomed, he might have a chance to enter the Mu family legitimately. How could she turn a blind eye to such tempting conditions? He had said such harsh words. Even if she did not care for the generous treatment he had arranged for her, she should at least give him an explanation, shouldn't she? If she did not want his arrangement, she should at least report to him whether the child was staying or leaving. Mu Yanqing wanted to call her several times to question her, but when he thought of her timid expression, he could not bear to do so and suppressed the urge. As if to deliberately give her the cold shoulder, he did not disturb her until night fell. However, for some reason, the more he ignored her, the more uneasy he felt. At 9 o'clock in the evening, he went to her apartment uninvited. He knocked on the door for a long time, but no one answered. Just as he suspected that something had happened to her and was about to dial her number, the door suddenly opened. Meng Qingxue's haggard and gloomy face entered his sight. However, upon seeing his arrival, she wasn't as happy as before, nor did she look surprised. She only said coldly, "You're here." These three words were neither cold nor warm, and they served to accentuate her indifferent attitude. The man fumed. "You didn't call me the whole day. What does that mean? Didn't you say that if there's nothing important, I shouldn't disturb you?" She asked curiously, but it made him fall silent. He was speechless and embarrassed. He had indeed said such words, but right now, he hated her thoughtfulness and gentleness. Like an unreasonable child, he shouted at her, "I told you not to disturb me, and you didn't even call me. How ridiculous." Meng Qingxue's face turned even paler. What? Wasn't he the one who was being ridiculous? "Let me in," he ordered matter-of-factly. Chapter 2186. After he walked in, Meng Qingxue stood at the door in a daze for a long time before she closed the door desolately. Mu Yanqing's sudden arrival gave her a great shock. She originally thought that this man must be angry with her, so he would not set foot here for a while. However, after not contacting him for a day, this man came to her door in a hurry at night. What is he doing? Why is he in such a hurry? Did the Mu family give him an ultimatum to clean up all the love affairs he had caused outside? Meng Qingxue caressed her lower abdomen worriedly, her heart aching terribly. If I had known, I wouldn't have told him. If she had known that he wouldn't marry her, she would have been fully prepared from the beginning. Even though this child was an accident, even if she was pregnant, she couldn't bear to abort it, so she shouldn't have been in such a hurry to tell him. At least, at such a time, even if he had declared that he would not marry her, she could have left him with dignity and dignity. She could have left quietly with the child in her stomach and not been as passive as she was now. This time, he seemed to be very stubborn. Could it be that he's planning to tie me up for an abortion? At the thought of this, Meng Qingshue's face turned even uglier. As soon as Mu Yangcheng walked in, he saw the fragrant noodles on the table. It was a bucket of instant noodles. It looked like it had just been cooked, for it was still steaming hot. However, if it were Yangchun noodles, it would be fine. This bucket of instant noodles was sold at a convenience store for 4 yuan a bucket. It was just a very simple instant noodles with no nutrition at all. Was she going to eat this for dinner? Mu Yangcheng was inexplicably angry. He pointed at the noodles on the table and said angrily, "You're going to eat this? Since you're pregnant, you should eat some. How can you keep up with the nutrition if you only eat instant noodles? What has it got to do with you?" Mu Yangcheng said coldly, "Don't I transfer money to your account every month? If you don't use this money to buy some nutrition and supplements, how can you raise the child well if you only eat instant noodles?" Pausing for a moment, he turned around and was about to reprimand her when he saw Meng Qingxue standing behind him in silence. She bit her lower lip hard, her eyes brimming with tears. No matter how hard she tried to hold it in, her tears became more and more turbulent. One drop after another fell down her cheeks. Her pitiful look. Mu Yangcheng was stunned at once. When he came back to his senses, he saw her trying to hold back her tears. Feeling impatient, he yelled at her, "Why are you crying for no reason?" Meng Qingxue did not answer him. Instead, she asked righteously, "What are you doing here for no reason?" Mu Yangcheng was momentarily speechless and did not know how to answer her. Suddenly, he realized how sharp her attitude was and instantly felt somewhat displeased. "Why can't I be here? I rented this apartment. Since I rented it, it's my territory. What's wrong with me coming to my own territory?" Meng Qingxue sneered. With tears in her eyes, she raised her head stubbornly and said, "Mu Yangcheng, I've already returned the apartment you rented for me previously. I earned this apartment with the money I earned from my part-time job. This is where I live, not your territory. You can't come and go as you please." Chapter 2187. This woman was actually fighting with him in all seriousness. Mu Yangcheng was instantly enraged. Hence, like a stubborn and willful child, he gritted his teeth and said, "I bought the diamond and necklace you're wearing, didn't I? I also got someone to get your phone made for you, didn't I? Let's not talk about the other things in this house. Even you are mine. I've engraved a seal on your body, and the child in your stomach is also mine." Meng Qingxue flew into a rage out of humiliation. Her eyes were red as she hysterically tried to stop him from continuing. Mu Yangcheng. However, Mu Yangcheng ignored her and her pair of red and swollen eyes as he declared arrogantly, "I even accompanied you to the mall to buy the clothes you're wearing. Tell me, other than this rental house, what else do you have that belongs to you?" Meng Qingxue bit her lower lip hard as she stared at him in a daze. She was so sad that she broke into a smile. Then, right in front of him, she grabbed the ends of her clothes with both hands. Almost immediately, she deftly took them off and threw them at his face as she screamed at the top of her lungs, "I'm returning them to you. I'm returning everything to you. All right." Mu Yangcheng was stunned by her outburst and was momentarily at a loss as to what to do. Meng Qingxue was only wearing a piece of underwear. Apart from taking off her dress and throwing it at him, she also took off the diamond studs in her ears, the crystal necklace, and the diamond anklet and threw them all at him. Finally, he saw her suddenly turn around and walk toward the bedroom. Mu Yangcheng grabbed her dress and chased after her, only to see her rummaging through the drawers and drawers. Finally, she found some expensive jewelry that he had given her in the past in a few dressing boxes. Most of them were expensive, and she had been keeping them safe all this while. She could not even bear to wear them, but now, she found them all and threw them all on the bed. What are you doing? Mu Yangcheng reprimanded. Meng Qingxue, on the other hand, seemed to be deaf. In the end, she took out a passbook, a few credit cards, and a Hermes bag that Mu Yangcheng had given her for her birthday last year. She threw everything on the bed. Meng Qingxue suddenly raised her head and stood in front of him. She forced herself to be more elegant and free, like a proud queen. She suddenly said, "I'll return everything to you. Whether it's the passbook, the credit card, the diamonds, the jewelry, or the branded bag you gave me, I'll return everything to you. From now on, let's cut off all ties. Please don't bother me anymore." You. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm not talking nonsense. I'm serious. Because I've had enough. I've had enough of your arrogance and conceit, I've had enough of your indifference and heartlessness, I've had enough of being like a caged canary, watching over you with all my heart, yet being unable to obtain your true heart. I've had enough of missing you without seeing the light of day, yet you don't care about me at all. I've had enough of your self-righteousness and lack of consideration for me. What did she get for her sincerity? Chapter 2188. Meng Qingxue said with tears streaming down her face. She grabbed a diamond earring and threw it at his face. Mu Yangcheng, how can you be so high and mighty? Yes. Your family background is superior. Yes. Your background is extraordinary. But it's not like I have to be trampled on by you. Let me off. From now on, you'll go your way, and I'll go mine. We'll mind our own business and mind our own business. How about this? Heh. Shut up. Mu Yangcheng could not take it anymore and scolded her. You're deliberately provoking me, aren't you? Meng Qingxue was suddenly at a loss. Tears streamed down her face, and her eyes were empty as she questioned him seriously. Then, what do you want me to do? Mu Yangcheng walked over and held her shoulders as he said domineeringly, Meng Qingxue, as long as you know what's good for you, you'd better take back your words and accept my arrangements obediently. Isn't that good? Don't you want to be with me? We can be together for the rest of our lives. If you become my woman, I'll give you the glory and wealth that others can only dream of. You can be like a rich madam, wear the prettiest clothes, wear the most expensive jewelry, and buy the most branded bags. I'll do everything for you. Meng Qingxue suddenly mocked him coldly, but you can't give me a status. Mu Yangcheng was stunned for a moment before he suddenly said in disgust and suspicion, Meng Qingxue, I'm warning you. Don't go overboard. Don't be too greedy. Greedy. Meng Qingxue laughed out loud as if she had heard an inexplicably funny joke. Perhaps it was too funny that she laughed so hard that she teared up. She rubbed her eyes, and this sad laughter instantly turned into sobs as she sobbed. Yes, I'm greedy. I just want to be your rightful wife. I want to stand by your side openly one day. Even if I don't wear the most branded clothes or carry the most expensive bags, I'll still feel gratified and happy. This kind of thinking may be a little too extravagant for you, Mu Yangcheng. You're really generous. You can give me endless glory and wealth, but you're stingy with even a basic status. I really don't know if this is something to be happy about or to find it laughable. Why are you so stubborn? Mu Yangcheng hated her stubbornness. He held her shoulders tightly and forced her to sit by the bed. He then said seriously, Do you know how long I've worked for this day? My second uncle said he's decided to help me, but before that, I have to agree to one condition. First, I have to cooperate with him. My power and status aren't that stable yet. If I want to sit on the patriarch's seat, I'm still a little lacking. If I were to marry a young lady from a big family, then it would definitely be an advantage for me. Why don't you zzz? You, zzz, SS. Tears streamed down Meng Qingxue's face as she said, Yangcheng, I love you. Even if you have nothing, I'll always be by your side and never leave you. I only want you. I don't care about the glory and wealth. I only want to be with you. Mu Yangcheng was moved by her words. No matter who he was, his heart would soften at her words. Chapter 2189. However, even if he was touched by Meng Qingxue's unswerving devotion, he would never give up the fight for the family head position because of this. He had waited for this day for too long. Now that he had such an opportunity, how could he give it up so easily? It was not easy for him to drag Mu Yaja down from his position. If he gave up just like that, wouldn't he be paving the way for someone else? At the thought of this, Mu Yangcheng regained his rationality and flung her hand away. Impossible. I can't give up just like that. Then, let's break up. Meng Qingxue suddenly suggested. Mu Yangcheng turned around in surprise. He didn't expect that this woman would be so magnanimous and even break up with him before he did. He also didn't expect that this woman, who had always loved him with all her heart, would let him go just like that, without any reluctance at all. You want to break up with me? Don't worry, I don't want any compensation from you. Even if it's a breakup fee, I'll return everything you've given me. I only hope that from now on, we'll cut off all ties. I won't pester you anymore, and you won't pester me anymore. Okay. If it were in the past, Mu Yangcheng would definitely suspect that this woman was playing hard to get with him. However, at this moment, when he saw the determination in Meng Qingshue's eyes, his heart suddenly trembled. This woman actually said such a sentence in an extremely serious manner. Meng Qingxue continued, as for the child in my stomach, you don't have to worry too much about it. I won't cause you much trouble. Whether you get rid of it or keep it, it has nothing to do with me anymore. Even if this child doesn't have a father from a young age, as a mother, I'll definitely make it up to him and raise him up. I only ask that you give me the right to be a mother and stop interfering with us. Meng Qingxue smiled coldly and then walked around him to the living room. She sat down on the sofa, picked up the bucket of noodles, and started eating. When Mu Yangcheng returned to the living room, he saw her from afar holding a bowl of noodles and wolfing them down with tears in her eyes. It could be seen that she was starving, and her stomach was rumbling. She was no longer as fashionable and delicate as she had been when they first met. Instead, she was in dire straits. Last night, he had deliberately ignored her and left in such a carefree manner. She had not eaten anything the entire night and had cried herself to sleep. Then, she had been frightened by a nightmare and had cried herself awake. When she woke up, she kept crying. She didn't eat breakfast or lunch. She couldn't lift her spirits. No matter what she did, she was surrounded by sadness. She didn't know where her tears came from. She cried until her eyes started to hurt. She scolded herself. Why did she cry so much for an irresponsible man? However, the more she thought about it, the more she cried. She couldn't do anything well, so she didn't go for her part-time job anymore. She called for a day off and simply hid in her blanket. She cried and slept and cried, and spent the day in a daze. Therefore, as soon as he opened the door, he saw a pair of red and swollen eyes that were like walnuts. Chapter 2190. Just as she was about to eat after cooking, this man came uninvited again. After saying so much, Meng Qingxue wished she could cut open her heart and let him see it clearly, but this man seemed indifferent. Right from the beginning, what he cared about was not her or the child in her stomach, but power and wealth. Meng Qingshue's heart turned cold. She thought, instead of pestering him, why don't I just let him go? No matter what I say, he won't change his mind. She shouldn't have those illusory dreams. Mu Yancheng's heart ached when he saw her down and out. He calmed down and said to her, "Don't make yourself suffer like this. Come with me. I've arranged a nanny and bodyguard for you. Come with me and I'll settle you down. Even if you don't think about yourself, you should think about the child." Meng Qingxue ate the noodles numbly. She did not say a word, but the expression on her face seemed to say, no need. He was deliberately giving him the cold shoulder. Later on, Mu Yangcheng rambled on again, but she did not listen to a single word he said. In the end, she only heard him stomping his feet as if he was extremely angry. Then, she heard the door slam and leave. Meng Qingxue raised her head and looked at the empty house. Finally, she picked up the bowl of noodles and drank a few mouthfuls of hot soup. However, she could not tell if the salty and astringent taste was the taste of the soup or her tears. The Song family. On this day, Song Zhenghua went out. Jiang Qimeng seemed to have used some connections to get a few strands of Mu Yancheng's hair from a servant of the Mu family and rushed to the hospital for a DNA test. However, Song Yunxi was worried about Song Enya's condition and stayed in her room the whole day. Song Enya did not get out of bed for the whole day and even ate her meals in bed. After getting pregnant, The symptoms of pregnancy followed. Song Enya's reaction was especially severe. She vomited badly and felt weak all over. Coupled with her drowsiness, she lay in bed for the whole day. In the evening, Jiang Chimeng rushed home. When she pushed open the bedroom door, she saw Song Yunxi sitting by the bed, playing games on her phone. Song Enya, on the other hand, was leaning against the headboard. Unknowingly, she had woken up and was staring blankly at the ceiling. Enya, the DNA test report is out, and it's confirmed that you're carrying Mu Yancheng's child, Jiang Chimeng said happily, only to see Song Enya lowering her head dejectedly and letting out a long sigh as tears streamed down her cheeks. Before this, she actually had some hope. Even if it was Mu Yaja's child, it would be fine. She would rather this was Mu Yaja's child and then abort the child because it meant that what Mu Yaja said last night was just to scare her. She didn't expect him to really use tricks to swap the sperm. This meant that this man's coldness was real. His heartlessness towards her was also real. She had loved him for more than 10 years. She had loved him so miserably, but in the end, she had been played in the palm of his hand. This knowledge almost destroyed her. Liar. Liar. She mumbled through gritted teeth, full of humiliation. Chapter 2191. Why? Why are you doing this to me? Song Enya roared as she covered herself with the blanket and cried uncontrollably. Jiang Chimeng's heart ached for her daughter, but she was also angry. Her heart ached for her daughter's downfall and helplessness, but she was even angrier at her stubbornness. Enya, isn't it great that you're pregnant with Mu Yancheng's child? Compared to Yaja, Mu Yancheng is now in high demand. If this child works hard and becomes the head of the Mu family, then you'll definitely be the matriarch of the Mu family in the future. Although things are a little complicated, it's still a lucky hit. Carrying Mu Yaja's child is better than carrying Mu Yaja's child. Song Yunxi stayed at the side and did not say a word. Song Enya, on the other hand, did not make a sound. She hid under the blanket and saw a bulging figure, which seemed to be secretly crying, trembling slightly. She walked over and comforted her. Enya, don't be too sad. Think about it. It's very important for a woman to choose the right husband in her life. Marriage is a second reincarnation for a woman. As long as she's chosen well, she'll have a lifetime of happiness. Besides, Yang Cheng is quite outstanding. He's gentler than Yaja. If you work hard, he'll definitely treat you like a treasure and dote on you. But what about Mu Yaja? Could it be that you still haven't thought it through and are still thinking about that lad? He's no longer the head of the Mu family, so life won't be easy for him. You'll only implicate yourself and suffer if you're with him. I know that you have deep feelings for him, but can feelings be eaten? Mom also admits that Yaja is very outstanding and extraordinarily handsome, but now that he's down and out, Mu Yancheng and him are like heaven and earth. A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. Women naturally have to be more open-minded and know how to treat themselves better. Of course, men are also accepted based on merit. Mu Yancheng isn't bad. Jiang Chimeng tried her best to persuade Song Enya before she finally stopped crying and calmed down a little. This child was Song Enya's only hope. With this child in her arms, perhaps the Song family could rise again with the help of the Mu family. Song Yunxi added, Enya, just give up on Uncle Mu. By treating you like this, it's obvious that he doesn't care about you at all. He even used such a method to scheme against you. What's worse is that he even used your innocence to threaten father and the Song family. What's the point of thinking about such a vile man? I can't accept this. Song Enya gritted her teeth. I can't take this lying down. How am I inferior to that woman? Last night, she had clearly thought it through, but when she woke up and looked at the bright sun outside the window, it couldn't shine into her heart. Thinking back, she felt that Mu Yaja had done her in. Yes, she had schemed and plotted a lot. In order to be with the person she loved, she had indeed used dirty method. But that was for the sake of loving him. She had never had any thoughts of harming him. When she thought about the artificial insemination, because her body was too weak, the failure rate of artificial insemination was too high. She would rather suffer more and use test tube babies. After much difficulty, she finally got pregnant. But in the end, what was the result? In the end, She was ruthlessly toyed with by the man she loved. This feeling was so painful that it was as if a knife was stabbing her heart and making her bleed. Chapter 2192. Right now, her hatred was bone and flesh. She loved, hated, and was infatuated with Muyaja, but in the end, she felt more like a lively clown. In the end, all her efforts were in vain and she ended up as a joke. She had been on tenterhooks all this while, yet she ended up in such a state. Song Enya's heart was twisted, and she could not let it go. My daughter is so outstanding, it's clearly his fault. Daughter, let it go. Jiang Chimeng comforted her gently. Song Enya gritted her teeth for a while before she felt a little better. Brother Mu. Just you wait. One day, I'll make you pay for all the humiliation you've given me today. That night, Song Zhanghua came back from a dinner party with a worried frown. Jiang Chimeng had just coaxed her daughter, but when she saw him looking gloomy and absent-minded, she could not help feeling worried. Zhanghua, what's wrong with you? You don't look good. Did you go to the hospital today? He did not answer his mother's question and asked directly. Jiang Chimeng nodded. I did 2 tests, and the results showed that they're both Mu Yanqing's children. Song Zhanghua was not happy about this, though. Instead, he said worriedly, today, I heard from a source that the Muse don't seem to know about this. Enya did a good job with this matter, so not many people know about it. It's only natural that the Muse don't know about it. That's not the problem. Huh. Then. Song Zhanghua suddenly glanced at her from the corner of his eyes and said, Mu Linfeng intends to arrange a marriage for Mu Yangcheng. Do you know about this? Jiang Chimeng was stunned as if she had been struck by lightning. A marriage alliance? Yes. I heard that they've already started looking for one, but I heard that Mu Linfeng is quite interested in the Lin's 3,000 gold ingot. Lin Shueya? Yes. Jiang Chimeng's expression gradually turned ugly as she said worriedly, the Lins are an impressive and prestigious family. Lin Shueya comes from a good family background. Not only is she well educated, but she's also the most doted on in the Lins. It's not surprising that Mu Linfeng has chosen her. But, what about Enya? Song Zhanghua frowned and said, I'm thinking about that too. Jiang Chimeng suggested, why don't we have a chat with Yanchen? There's no need to rush. The third daughter of the Lin family was very arrogant. If it were Mu Yaja, it would be fine, but she might not take a liking to Mu Yangcheng. We can't rush this matter. Otherwise, the Song family will lose face. Then, let's endure it for the time being and act according to the circumstances. Is that what you mean? Yes. Song Zhanghua nodded and suddenly asked with concern, how's Enya's mood? It's not stable at all. I've thought things through, but I can't get over the hurdle in my heart for the time being. Jiang Chimeng suddenly thought of something and asked nervously, what about that matter? The thing you promised Yaja yesterday. Hush money. Yes. Song Zhanggua's face darkened, then he sighed and shook his head helplessly. Since he wants that piece of land, let's give it to him. Other than that, I can't think of any other way. This time, we'll let him get away with it for the time being. Is this really okay? That piece of land is worth a fortune. It can't be measured with money. Chapter 2193. Dad. At some point, Song Yunshi had been standing on the second floor, listening to their conversation in silence. When he heard this, he could not bear to listen any longer and suddenly said, Dad, you don't have to be so afraid of this man anymore, right? Uncle Mu is no longer the head of the household and has nothing left. Do you have to be so wary of him? If you can't handle him, leave him to me. I know some brothers in the underworld. It won't be difficult for them to secretly take care of a poor boy with no power. Bastard. Song Zhanghua looked up and scolded him. You don't know your place. What brothers in the underworld? Don't tell me you're referring to those people from the Gu family again. Didn't I tell you not to associate with the Gu family? You're still bothering those people behind my back, aren't you? Song Yunshi's face turned red. If you have the time, you should read more books and at least broaden your horizons. Do you think that Mu Yaja has nothing left even though he's no longer the head of the household? Song Zhanghua suddenly snorted and said sarcastically, if such an arrogant boy didn't have a backup plan for himself, how could he have left so easily? Don't be fooled by how powerless he looks now. Even with his current strength, you won't be his match at all if you go head-to-head with him. When he was still the head of the household, he already had a lot of connections. Whether it's the underworld or the underworld, he has people in all walks of life. Don't try to hit a rock with an egg and be rebuff. Song Yunchi's face turned pale at his words. She snorted indignantly, turned around, and stormed into the room. Bang! The door was slammed loudly. Song Zhanghua was even angrier now. He scolded, "Looks like this boy has been spoiled rotten by me. He lost his temper just because I said a few words to him. Do these two siblings really want to anger me to death?" Jiang Qimeng immediately comforted, "Yunchi is still young and doesn't know any better. Don't be angry with him." However, Song Zhanghua said disapprovingly, "He's already in his 20s and he still says that he doesn't know any better. Then how can he be considered sensible? 70 or 80 years old? Do you only know how to be sensible now?" Song Yunchi was standing in the living room. Even though the room was soundproof, he could still hear Song Zhanggua's angry curses from the living room. His chest was filled with anger, but he had nowhere to vent it. Clenching his fists tightly, he punched the door a few times as if he did not feel pain. Only then did he feel a little better. Mu Yaja, that heartless man. If it wasn't for him, the Song family's family. No matter what, he could not take this lying down. He had to teach Mu Yaja a lesson. Otherwise, he wouldn't know how high the sky was and how deep the earth was. At the thought of this, Song Yunchi narrowed his eyes fiercely. His eyes were blazing with fury and ambition. Jingyi Private Clubhouse. This is the most luxurious private club near Dongjie. It's one of the 5 biggest clubs in Jing City. It has entertainment, conference, hotel. It has everything. Jingyi is the most luxurious private club. Just the membership fee for a year is several million. It's not something that ordinary people can afford. Chapter 2194. As a place exclusive to the rich, once night fell, some high-ranking officials, nobles, and descendants of the rich and powerful clans would gather here, indulging in debauchery and indulging in debauchery. Jingyi Private Clubhouse was the property of the Jiyu family. Therefore, the Jiyu family's power was concentrated in this area. In the swimming pool, Jiyu Jinglian was leaning against the side of the pool with a towel draped over his shoulder. He was holding a glass of dry red wine and sipping it casually. A man in a formal suit suddenly came over and knelt down beside the pool. He lowered his head and whispered in his ear, "Young Master Jiyu, there's a VIP guest who wants to see you." Jiyu Jinglian's almond-shaped eyes, which were originally closed for a nap, slowly opened. He glanced at him frivolously. When he heard that name, he suddenly drank the dry red wine in his glass in one gulp, then turned around and walked up the escalator. His well-built and well-defined body was soon exposed to the air. Transparent water droplets slowly slid down his body. That charming and devilish pheromones, no matter how strong a woman's willpower was, at this moment, standing in front of him, she would be mesmerized to the point of suffocation, right? The moment he came out of the pool, someone immediately came forward and carefully took the wine glass from his hand. Then, another person respectfully came forward and draped a graceful and luxurious bathrobe over him. In the private room, Song Yunchi had already finished a whole bottle of red wine. At this moment, he was really annoyed. When he thought about how weak his father was and how he was willing to give a piece of golden land to Mu Yaja, he was so angry that he drank another glass. Just as he opened the second bottle, the door was suddenly pushed open. He raised his head and saw Jiyu Jinglian, who walked in like a moon surrounded by stars. He forced a smile on his face and stood up respectfully. In front of this man, even if he was proud and arrogant, he still didn't dare to relax. "Young Master Jiyu." He chuckled and greeted politely. However, Jiyu Jinglian acted as if he did not hear her. He walked slowly to the sofa and sat down gracefully. Then, he crossed his legs and looked very noble. After coming out of the swimming hall, he changed his clothes, but his black hair was still a little wet and slightly messy, but it did not diminish his heroic spirit. Song Yunchi was not embarrassed by the arrogance and disdain he had shown from beginning to end. Instead, she smiled more and more flatteringly. To him, a man like Jiyu Jinglian should be so arrogant and superior. The more one mingled in this circle, the the more they paid attention to their status. Since their identities were different, their statuses would naturally be different as well. Sit down. Don't stand on ceremony, Ji Jinglian said lightly, then beckoned with his finger. Soon, a waiter came up and opened a bottle of Lafite. Song Yunshi silently sized him up. She had to admit that the man in front of her definitely didn't look like a crown prince from the underworld. Ji Jinglian's mother was one of the top 10 beauties in the capital back then, and he had inherited her beauty. His facial features were between genders, and his deep-set facial features were full of heroic spirit. However, his feminine eyes and exquisite nose and lips were definitely something that women could not compare to. Her beauty had nothing to do with gender. It was so beautiful that it was suffocating and breathtaking. Chapter 2195. His eyes, in particular, were captivating. The reason was that his pupils were different from those of ordinary people. His pure amber eyes were like top-grade and beautiful colored glass, flowing with light. He raised his eyelashes and raised his wrist to look at the time, as if secretly setting a time for Song Yunshi in front of him. He had always paid attention to the concept of time. Therefore, no matter who the person was, if they came to talk to him about something, they had to be concise and comprehensive within 30 minutes. Otherwise, he would not have that kind of patience. Why are you looking for me? Speak. Song Yunshi first rubbed her hands a little uneasily and politely exchanged a few words. Then, she went straight to the point and summarized the matter. Mu Yaja, that bastard, is too much. He's going too far. I really can't take this lying down. I can't watch him trample the Song family under his feet, so I want to teach him a lesson. Oh. Ji Jinglian nodded slightly, curled his lips, and then smiled evilly. So, you came to me just to complain about these things? In other words, there was some dissatisfaction. Song Yunshi and Ji Jinglian had known each other for a long time, but the relationship between the two of them could only be considered as casual acquaintances at best. Song Yunshi had always wanted to befriend Ji Jinglian, who had a strong background in the underworld. However, no matter how she tried to curry favor with him, it was difficult for her to get too close to him. Ji Jinglian was really too arrogant. He was like a natural aristocrat. The aura in his every move was incomparable. Song Yunshi said, I came to you because I hope that you can help me vent my anger. Young Master Ji, I know that you have some tricks up your sleeve. In front of you, Mu Yaja is just a pitiful worm. Won't he be easily crushed under your feet? Not interested. Ji Jinglian interrupted her with little interest. His expression was cold, and he yawned lazily. Mu Yaja. He had also heard about his resignation as the patriarch. However, he wasn't so bored as to go against a former overlord. The Mu family was an old rival of the Ji family, so they knew each other very well. Song Yunshi was short-sighted and stupid, but Ji Jinglian could see the situation clearly. Although Mu Yaja seemed to be in dire straits now, having lost some of his status and his former glory, it was as if he had fallen from the top of a mountain to the bottom of a valley thousands of meters down, smashed into pieces. Ji Jinglian, who could see the man's ambition clearly, knew that the current situation was only temporary. Before long, this man would once again stand at the peak at the speed of light in an extremely short amount of time. His current abject state was just a cover for others. Mu Yaja was the same as him, an arrogant man to the bone. He would never allow himself to fall from a high position. Even if he abdicated, it was just a means to advance by retreating. Therefore, he wasn't interested in having any entanglements with such an unfathomable man. Moreover, the Ji and Mu families had always minded their own business and didn't have any feud. Even if they had always been against each other, it was just a competition and had nothing to do with gratitude or grudges. To outsiders, Mu Yaja and Ji Jinglian seemed to be enemies and friends. They couldn't see clearly. But in fact, these two men were both at the top of the world, and they seemed to appreciate each other. Chapter 2196. When Song Yunshi heard this, she was puzzled. Not interested. I don't think I have the obligation to help you. Ji Jinglian appeared to be very impatient. After saying this, he stood up and walked towards the door. Song Yunshi immediately stood up and said, Young Master Ji, that's not what I meant. If you're willing to stand up for me, I definitely won't neglect you. You won't be short of remuneration either. As long as you can stand up for me, I definitely won't treat you unfairly. Jiyu Jinglian suddenly smiled and walked in front of him. He put his hands in his trouser pockets and bent down slightly to face him. He said evilly, "What makes you think that I'll provoke an enemy who's as powerful as me for a person whose name I don't even remember?" Song Yunshi's eyes widened in surprise. A cold glint flashed across Jiyu Jinglian's eyes. He reached out his hand and grabbed his chin with his slender fingers. He lifted his chin and sized him up. Song Yunshi's stubborn and unconvinced face looked so childish. Jiyu Jinglian suddenly tilted his head to the side. A sinister look appeared on his devilishly handsome face as he said, "For a man of Mu Yaja's stature, you either don't go against him, or you should be prepared to die together with him. Leave no room for negotiation and get rid of him completely." After a pause, he asked slowly, "How much are you going to pay? How much do you want? How much do I want?" Jiyu Jinglian seemed to have heard a funny joke and said coldly, "You don't seem to know the rules very well. What do you mean?" Jiyu Jinglian patted his face. It was a humiliating action, arrogant and frivolous. Song Yunshi gritted her teeth because of this humiliating action. However, she heard him say, "Mu Yaja is worth hundreds of millions. Can you afford to buy his life?" As he spoke, he shook him off, smiled coldly, turned around, and lit a cigarette. Jiyu Jinglian took a puff of smoke and narrowed his eyes. He said casually, "Kid, this complicated world is not as simple as you think. Don't think that just because your father is the mayor, you have the right to come here and make a fool of yourself. Get lost." After that, the waiter draped the black suit over his shoulders, leaving the two empty sleeves beside him as he walked towards the door in a carefree manner. Song Yunshi couldn't stand it anymore. She stood up and shouted at his back, "Stop right there." Even though he had shouted those two words with great vigor, Jiyu Jinglian seemed to be disdainful of his words and left without a word. He didn't know where his confidence came from, or perhaps it was the bottle of red wine he drank. With the help of the alcohol, he vented all his dissatisfaction and humiliation. "I think you just don't have the guts, right?" He claimed to be the crown prince of the Jiyu family, but unexpectedly, he was also a coward. He said so much in a dignified manner, but in fact, he didn't dare to play with Mu Yaja. The dignified Jiyu Jinglian only has this much courage. After venting her anger, she finished. In her anger, Song Yunshi kicked the short table beside her. The wine glass on the table tilted and fell to the ground, shattering into pieces. The waiters in the private room looked at him strangely, or with a hint of fierceness. However, Song Yunshi was drunk. She didn't care whose territory she was in and shouted, "What are you looking at? A bunch of cowards." Ha. Chapter 2197. In the end, when he dragged his tired and drunk body and was about to leave, a group of men in black suddenly rushed into the private room. At this moment, Song Yunshi was so drunk that she was staggering. She glanced at the crowd and shouted unhappily, "What are you looking at? You guys." The man in the lead smiled majestically and said, "Young Master Song, you haven't paid your bill for tonight." "What bill?" Song Yunshi said angrily, "Didn't I just drink 2 bottles of red wine?" The man signaled with his eyes, and the waiter handed over the bill expressionlessly. Song Yunshi took it and glanced at it. She immediately exploded with anger. 88 million? Yes. Young Master Song, pay the bill before you leave. They were obviously making things difficult for him. This was the Jiyu family's territory. What he said just now was undoubtedly looking for trouble in their territory. If they heard that someone dared to humiliate their master, they would naturally think of ways to make Song Yunshi uncomfortable. 2 bottles of dry red wine for 8 million, plus the wine glass you broke, 880,000. Young Master Song, pay the bill. T. What kind of wine is so expensive? You're obviously blackmailing me, aren't you? Just pay directly. Don't talk nonsense with us. If you don't pay, we won't be polite. Song Yunshi slammed the table. She was drunk and was not afraid of them at all. She shouted with her tongue out, "Do you know who I am? My father is the head of the T organization. What can you do to me? Ha ha ha." When the group of people heard this, they roared with laughter. Song Yunshi was so embarrassed that her face and ears turned red. She thickened her neck and said angrily, "What are you laughing at?" One of them said contemptuously, "Bulsh *T, head of the *T organization, even if the Heavenly King is here, he can't talk about the law. Young Master Song, you're standing on the Gu family's territory. Here, you have to follow our rules. If you don't pay, you can do whatever you want. Then don't blame us for being impolite." As he spoke, the man ordered his subordinates, "Go, this brat dares to go back on his word. Show him some tricks." As soon as he finished speaking, a group of brothers behind him immediately rushed up and surrounded Song Yunshi, punching and kicking her. Song Yunshi was from the Jun team. After all, she had practiced martial arts. However, she was drunk after all. Her punches were light and without any strength. Soon, she was defeated and beaten to a pulp. 10 minutes later, at the back door of the clubhouse, Song Yunshi was kicked out like a piece of garbage. She fell to the ground with a bloody nose and a swollen face. "That man mocks him. You don't have money and you come to Jingyi. Idiot." Everyone laughed and closed the door. Song Yunshi staggered to his feet. He touched his nose and felt a sharp pain from a dislocated bone. He lowered his head and saw a pool of blood on his palm. He clenched his teeth and turned around, but he soon fell down again after taking a few shaky steps. That person walked into the meeting room. Gu Jinglian sat in front of the table and flipped through the documents calmly. Then he heard his subordinate report respectfully, "Young Master Gu, the trash has been cleaned up." Gu Jinglian didn't even raise his eyelids and said, "In the future, open your eyes and look carefully. Don't let any dog in." "Yes, I understand." Gu Jinglian suddenly thought of something and asked calmly, "Is she dead?" Chapter 2198. Gu Jinglian closed the document and said coldly, "It's such a cold day. Get a car to send him to the hospital. It's bad luck if he dies here." "Okay. It's Lunar New Year's Eve tomorrow." Mu Yaja was reading in the study when Yun Shusha walked into the study. She rested her head on his shoulder and smiled happily. Her eyes were sparkling and she looked very excited. After Yo-Yo's reminder, she checked the calendar and confirmed that it would be Lunar New Year's Eve tomorrow night. She was overjoyed. After all, this was the first time she and Mu Yaja spent New Year's Eve together. She was looking forward to it. Mu Yaja, however, remained unmoved and continued flipping through his book. His emotions appeared to be calm as he hummed in acknowledgement. "Oh." Yun Shusha was unhappy with his cold attitude. She pushed his book away and forced him to look at her. She said seriously, "It's going to be Lunar New Year soon. Don't you look forward to it?" "Look forward to what?" Yun Shusha was a little unhappy. "You don't seem to be looking forward to the Lunar New Year." Mu Yaja was stunned for a moment before he smiled faintly. "I've never celebrated the Lunar New Year before, so I feel that it's no different from other days. How is that possible?" "There are many things to celebrate the Lunar New Year. For example, today is the night before the Lunar New Year's Eve. You're not allowed to be busy. Let's prepare for Lunar New Year's Eve together." Before Lunar New Year's Eve, Yun Shusha started to get busy. First, she had to clean the house. Even though she, Yo-Yo, and Xiaochen had already cleaned the house, that was because they were not allowed to clean the house during the 3 days of the Lunar New Year. They did not want to lose their fortune. Hence, they had to clean the house and courtyard early in the morning on Lunar New Year's Eve to bid farewell to the old and welcome the new. Yun Shusha had already bought the fireworks and firecrackers in advance. Every New Year, they would set off firecrackers early in the morning and fireworks at night. This was an unshakable activity. In the living room, Yo-Yo had already prepared a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. When Mu Yaja came to the living room, Yun Shusha was already sitting in front of the table with a brush in hand. She was thinking hard about how to write a few couplets. Xiao Ichen leaned on the side and muttered, "Mommy, is your calligraphy readable?" Yo-Yo said affirmatively, "Of course. Mommy's calligraphy skills are unquestionable." Yun Shusha said proudly, "Mommy has been practicing calligraphy since I was in university. You can say that I've made some progress in my studies. Mu Yaja came to her side and looked at the two red spring festival couplets. At this moment, they had not written anything yet, so he asked, "What couplets do you plan to write?" Ah! Yun Shusha's mind was blank, and she didn't know what to write. Yo-Yo suddenly said, "Let's put up a sticker on the front door that reads, 'Heaven increases the years, people live longer, and when spring comes, families are blessed.'" He then took out two portraits of door gods, Yuchi Jingda and Qin Qiong. "I've prepared the portraits too." Xiao Ichen took a look and his lips twitched. "What's this? Door gods. Door gods." Yo-Yo said, "Yuchi Jingda and Qin Qiong." Xiao Ichen was puzzled and asked, "Why do you want to put up these two guys?" Chapter 2199. "Then I can do it too." Xiao Ichen flexed his muscles. "Draw a picture of me and paste it on the door. I want to be a door god too." "You." Yo-Yo snorted and said disdainfully, "With your skinny arms and legs, you still want to be a door god." Yuchi Jingda and Qin Qiong are marshals under Li Shimin. The reason for this custom is that after Li Shimin ascended the throne, he couldn't sleep at night because he killed countless people and often had nightmares. Therefore, the officials suggested that Yuchi Jingda and Qin Qiong should stand guard at the door so that they could sleep well at night. Later, the palace sent an artist to draw these two people and paste it on the door. "Yo-Yo, are you an encyclopedia? You know so much." Yo-Yo said disdainfully, "Do you think I'm like you? Simple-minded." While the two little guys were bickering, Yun Shusha finished writing the couplet and showed it to them. "It's done." Mu Yaja glanced at it and was slightly surprised. The handwriting was clear and elegant. It was indeed beautiful calligraphy. Mu Ichen was so shocked that his mouth opened wide. He said in a daze, "Mommy, the handwriting is not bad." Yun Shusha was suddenly at a loss. "What should we paste on the bedroom?" "Let's write birds flying happily in the sky and the earth tied together in a knot," Yo-Yo said again. Yun Shusha and Mu Yaja looked at each other and lowered their heads in shame. Their educational level was worse than a child's. Shame. After writing the couplet, they wanted to paste it on New Year's Eve. Yo-Yo brought a stack of red paper and 2 pairs of scissors and said that he wanted to cut the window flowers. When Mu Yaja saw this, his curiosity was piqued and he excitedly asked Yo-Yo to teach him. Yo-Yo had been good at handicrafts since he was young. During the Lunar New Year, he cut the window decorations himself. They were as good as the ones bought outside. Mu Yaja was also interested. He looked at the two little guys' scissors and felt that it was a bit interesting. He took a piece of red paper and fiddled with it for a long time. Finally, he unfolded it, only to find that the cut was a mess. Yun Shusha, who was standing at the side, could not help bursting into laughter. Yo-Yo also saw her father's terrible handiwork skills. She covered her mouth and snickered. Even Mu Ichen laughed mercilessly. "Daddy is so stupid." Mu Yaja glared at him in dissatisfaction. He snorted and said confidently, "That's because no one taught me. Let me do it." Yo-Yo abandoned Mu Ichen and sat on Mu Yaja's lap, personally teaching him. Paper cutting was really amazing. She watched as the boy folded and cut a piece of red paper in his hand. From time to time, he would carefully make a few strokes with a knife. Finally, when the paper was unfolded, the word "fu" appeared neatly on the paper. It looked very proper. Mu Yaja also learned seriously. In the end, under Yo-Yo's guidance, he also learned the basics of paper cutting. At least it was pleasing to the eye. Yo-Yo nodded and commented, "You've made some progress." She pasted the window decorations on the glass, the door, and the wall. The festive atmosphere of the Lunar New Year was immediately brought out. Mu Yaja hugged Mu Ichen and looked at the clear glass. The red window decorations made him smile. So, the Lunar New Year felt so warm. Chapter 2200. However, it turned out that spending the New Year with family was such a warm and blissful experience. Actually, the New Year was not on the streets. The true New Year was at home and in one's heart. The true meaning of the New Year was only when one's family was together. Mu Yaja suddenly understood why all the employees in the company could not wait to return home at the end of the year. Dishing Financial Group's usual practice was to finish all the work on hand and then have an early holiday. Therefore, half a month before the new year, all the employees worked hard to catch up with their workload so that they could spend more time with their families on such meaningful days. Mu Yaja personally pasted the last piece of paper on the window of the study and picked up Xiao Chen. The father and son looked at each other and smiled warmly. "Daddy, Daddy." Yo-Yo ran over with 2 big red lanterns in his hands. He beamed and said, "Daddy, come and do me a favor." "What favor?" Mu Yaja put down Xiao Chen and walked over. Yo-Yo grabbed his hand and hurried toward the door. It turned out that Yo-Yo wanted to hang 2 red lanterns at the door. After all, it would look more festive. However, he was short. Even if Yun Shusha lifted him up high, it was still difficult for him to do so. There was no ladder at home, so he went to Mu Yaja eagerly. At 188 meters, Mu Yaja lifted Yo-Yo up easily and hooked him. After Yo-Yo hung the lanterns, the festive atmosphere was immediately apparent. As it was nearing New Year's Eve, Yun Shusha drove to the supermarket and decided to buy the vegetables and meat for the New Year's Eve dinner in advance. She also prepared some dumpling wrappers to make dumplings. It was New Year's Eve, after all. It was a custom for everyone to sit together, make dumplings, and eat dumplings together. After buying the groceries, Yun Shusha suddenly thought of something and suggested, "Let's invite Shou Jie to join us for the New Year's Eve dinner. It's just an extra pair of chopsticks with more people. It'll be livelier." "Okay." Yo-Yo agreed and was quite interested. Mu Yaja did not have any objections. It was his first time celebrating the New Year with his family, so he felt that it would be livelier with more people around. Thus, Yun Shusha called Gong Jie. When the call went through, she happily invited him, "Shou Jie, tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Let's have New Year's Eve dinner together." After a while, Gong Jie then asked a question, "New Year's Eve? What does that mean?" Yun Shusha Yo-Yo-Yoshi had suddenly forgotten that when she and little Jie were still young, they did not have a proper New Year's celebration. She vaguely remembered that her mother was short of money at that time. On New Year's Eve, having meat and fish was already considered a good New Year's celebration. When his mother was not around, little Jie should have grown up overseas and could be considered half a foreigner. Therefore, he was not very familiar with the customs and terms of the Spring Festival. Hence, she explained seriously, "It's New Year's Eve. Tomorrow night is New Year's Eve, so let's have a reunion dinner together. The more the merrier. After the reunion dinner, we're going to the riverside to set off fireworks to welcome the new year. Are you coming?" She had already purchased the fireworks. Chapter 2201. Some fireworks cost a few dozen yuan each, while some cost a few hundred yuan for just 1 second. These were things that she would never have dared to think about in the past. In recent years, the capital had implemented a standard of strictly prohibiting fireworks in the city. However, on New Year's Eve, many people still went to the riverside to set off fireworks. Firstly, it was for the festive atmosphere. Secondly, setting off fireworks was suitable for all ages. It was also one of the children's favorite activities. Without it, it would inevitably be lacking in flavor. Setting off fireworks was an ancient tradition passed down by the ancestors. It would be a pity to lose it. Gong Jie readily agreed, "Sure." Yun Shusha said, "Then it's settled. Be there at 6 p.m. sharp. You're not allowed to be late. Otherwise, you'll have to drink as punishment." "Okay." Yo-Yo knew that Yun Shusha was calling Gong Jie. She suddenly leaned over to the phone and said loudly, "Uncle, remember to give red packets to Xiao Chen and me." On the other end, Gong Jie laughed and said, "Little tycoon, are you really interested in my red packets? It's the thought that counts. As for how much I'm going to give, it all depends on my performance." Yo-Yo was a cunning person. Thus, she managed to get Gong Jie to agree with her with just a few words. Gong Jie cleared his throat and said, "Just be good and wait for me to give you your red packet." After hanging up the phone, Yun Shusha felt extremely happy. It was as if she was sitting on a hydrogen balloon and was slowly floating up into the clouds. She accidentally found Hua Jin's number. She was stunned for a moment and frowned. Then, she hesitated for a moment and dialed the number with a hint of anticipation. At City Condominium. Hua Jin was wearing a bathrobe and leaning against the bay window, looking at the beautiful sunset. Suddenly, his phone rang. He picked it up immediately and heard Yoon Shusha's gentle and careful voice on the other end. Hua Jin, it's New Year's Eve tomorrow. Would you like to come to my house for New Year's Eve dinner? Hua Jin couldn't react in time. He choked on a mouthful of smoke and coughed for a long time. Yoon Shusha could not help but raise her eyebrows when she heard the heart-wrenching coughing coming from the phone. She was a little surprised. What's wrong? The reason why she thought of Hua Jin was because she was concerned that his family was not by his side. Wouldn't he be very lonely if he thought too much? Therefore, she wanted to invite him to her house to spend time together. Hua Jin stared blankly for a while before he suddenly laughed. Why would you think of me? Because it's New Year. If you spend it alone, won't it be very lonely? After all, it's New Year's Eve. The more the merrier, Yoon Shusha said. She paused and suddenly asked in disappointment, what's wrong? Are you unwilling? Or do you have an appointment? No. Hua Jin immediately said, it's just that I'm very surprised. I didn't expect you to invite me to welcome the new year together. That's because you're my family too. Yoon Shusha said matter-of-factly. Hua Jin's expression froze. Instantly, a gentle smile formed on his lips. A warmth from the sky enveloped him. He was extremely touched by the simple word family. He said gently, okay, then you must come tomorrow night. Set your bowl and chopsticks. After the New Year's Eve dinner, let's go to the riverside to set off fireworks, okay? Okay. After hanging up the phone, Hua Jin looked at the screen that indicated the end of the call. However, he could not stop smiling. His heart felt extremely warm. Chapter 2202. In such a bustling city, on such a cold winter day, he actually felt that he was no longer alone. It was great to be able to celebrate the new year with everyone. When Song Jianghua received the call from the hospital, he was inevitably shocked. When he rushed to the hospital with Jiang Chimeng, he saw Song Yunxi lying in the intensive care unit. His face was bruised and swollen, and his legs and arms were broken in several places. It was almost New Year's Eve, and he was actually lying in the hospital on New Year's Eve. He instantly felt that he had hit the jackpot. This kid was still fine yesterday, but he went out in the middle of the night. When he turned around, he received a notice from the hospital saying that he was lying in the hospital. When he rushed over, he saw that he was badly injured. It was obvious that he had been beaten up like this by someone. Jiang Chimeng felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. She threw herself at the bedside and cried, Yunxi. However, after calling for a long time, Song Yunxi did not have the strength to respond. He was still in a semi-conscious state. His mind was muddled, and his jaw had been dislocated. He could not open his mouth or speak at all. Jiang Chimeng gritted her teeth and cursed, which bastard did this to our child? It's New Year's Eve. How unlucky. Song Jianghua stood by the bed and frowned as he sized up the child. He was so angry that he could not speak. Where did this kid go last night? It's obvious that he was beaten up by someone. Where the hell did he go? Tears streamed down Jiang Chimeng's face and she couldn't say a word. Song Jianghua suddenly felt frustrated. He slammed the bedside table and scolded, Cry. You only know how to cry. She only knew how to shed tears whenever something happened to her. What else can you do other than cry? How can my heart not ache when my child is beaten up to this state? Jiang Chimeng retorted aggrievedly. I don't know where he went last night. If you didn't receive the call from the hospital, I would have thought that he went to fool around again. You can't take good care of your daughter, and you can't discipline your son well. As a mother, can't you be more careful? Before Jiang Chimeng could defend herself, a row of medical staff suddenly walked in from the door. When the head doctor saw Song Jianghua, he said politely, Mr. Song, nice to meet you. The doctor chatted with Song Jianghua for a while, then invited him to the office to analyze Song Yunxi's injury. Half an hour later, Song Yunxi finally walked in with a gloomy face. However, Song Yunxi was still unconscious and was sitting at the side angrily. Jiang Chimeng immediately walked over and asked worriedly, Jianghua, what did the doctor say? This kid was seriously injured by someone. In addition to the fractures of his ribs, knees, tendons, shoulders, intracranial hemorrhage, and moderate concussion, the doctor said that such injuries were definitely not caused by one person. It was as if he had been ganged up on by a group of people. He wouldn't be able to recover in a short time. Even after the surgery, there will still be some residual effects. For this child, once there are some injuries, it means that he will have to retire early. Retired? Jiang Chimeng widened her eyes in shock. Why? Chapter 2203. However, if he were to retire now, it would mean that all the meritorious service he had accumulated over the years would be gone. Song Zhanghua appeared calm on the surface, but deep down, he was already heartbroken and depressed. He had worked so hard and paid such a high price, all for the sake of planning a good future for this brat while he still had some power. But now, look at what had happened. He had lost everything. After he retired and returned home from the BU team, it would be difficult to say that he would have a meteoric rise. This lad's great future had been ruined by him just like that. The most hateful thing was that Song Yunxi was still unconscious. Even if Song Zhanghua wanted to ferociously find the culprit who had beaten his son to such a state, there was no way to find out. Song Zhanghua was extremely vexed and frustrated. Be it Song Enya or Song Yunxi, they were constantly causing trouble for him. Song Enya was one thing. She was used to being pampered and noble. Because of her difficult temper, she had provoked Mu Yaja. However, before this matter could be resolved, Song Yunxi was in trouble again. Song Zhanghua was really annoyed. Why were there so many troublesome matters? Just which deity had he offended? Everything had gone wrong this year. It seemed that he was destined to spend this new year in the hospital. At the thought of this, Song Zhanghua smoked 2 cigarettes in a row. Then, he stood up and ran to settle some work matters. Jiang Chimeng stayed by the bed and held Song Yunxi's cold hands with heartache. She could only cry non-stop as if this was the only way to vent some of the depression in her heart. Early in the morning of New Year's Eve, Yun Shusha got out of bed. As the grandest lunch of the year, the reunion dinner on New Year's Eve was indispensable. The family had to be complete, and the dishes had to be sumptuous. No matter where they worked, they had to return home covered in dust and sit at the table to have a reunion dinner and share the joy of family. There were also many things to pay attention to at the reunion dinner. The must-have dish for lunch was fish, which meant that there was more than enough every year. There had to be chicken, which meant good luck, tofu and cabbage, which meant happiness and wealth, fans, which meant longevity and good luck. Yo-Yo even prepared canned peaches, which meant escape from disaster and health. Yun Shusha was surprised. Even she had not thought of this. Lastly, there was good wine, which meant that life was everlasting and good. Early in the morning, Yun Shusha and Yo-Yo were busy in the kitchen. In the afternoon, Yun Yecheng and Yun Yeho arrived. Yun, of course, she had not wanted to invite her mother and daughter. To her to invite to the New Year's Eve dinner. However, she didn't want to invite them. The mother and daughter trio were all top-notch. If she invited them, it would be hard to avoid making things unpleasant again. She didn't want to bring bad luck to the family during the new year. But when he thought about it, he felt rather embarrassed. Speaking of which, one was her aunt, and the other was her elder sister. If she forgot about them just like that, it would be hard to avoid being heartless. Yun Shusha was caught in a dilemma and felt very conflicted. In fact, before this, Xiongyu had called Yun Yecheng and told him that the family would have a meal together on New Year's Eve. Chapter 2204. Thus, she said, it's New Year's Eve. My brother and I will just eat at home. There's no need for us to gather for a meal. His wife was displeased to hear that. What's wrong? Do you think we're embarrassing you and embarrassing you? Now that your family is rich, you have a capable daughter, and you have a rich son-in-law, so you don't want to acknowledge us as your poor relatives anymore, do you? So what if we're poor? We're family, after all, and we're not greedy for anything. Why don't you give us the honor of having a meal together on New Year's Eve? What was the truth? In the past 2 months, the money she had brought over from her hometown had long been used up. Before they came to the capital, Xiongyu and Yun Qingmiao still had a lot of yearning and anticipation for the glamorous life in the city. However, once they rented a house in the capital and started living there, the pressure came crashing down on them like a mountain. to the point where they could barely breathe. With the high rent, daily expenses, and living expenses in the capital, it was already extremely difficult for them to make ends meet. Yoon Chinli and Yoon Qingmiao also found part-time jobs, but since they had just moved to the capital, they were unfamiliar with everything. Not to mention earning money, each of them only had a monthly salary of more than 3,000 yuan, which added up to more than 6,000 yuan. After deducting the food and transportation expenses, as well as the occasional shopping trip, they were out of money. His wife, on the other hand, was thick-skinned. She had approached him several times, saying that she was out of money and wanted to borrow some. He knew very well that the money would be wasted once he lent it out. Still, he was worried that if he did not lend them the money, the mother-daughter trio would surely cause a lot of trouble for Yoon Shusha. Thus, he secretly lent them a few sums of money behind his back, but the moment his wife tasted the sweetness, her greed kicked in and she could not take it back. When it came to New Year's Eve, Seong-yu put on a dignified front by saying that she wanted to have a reunion dinner with her family, but in reality, she would probably beat around the bush or shamelessly ask Yoon Shusha for money during the meal. He did not want to make things so awkward, so he asked directly, "Did you guys run out of money again?" His wife flew into a rage out of humiliation when she heard that. "What? Brother, are you treating the three of us like beggars? All you talk about is money, money, money. Do you really think we're begging for food?" After all, they were a family. What was wrong with celebrating the new year together? Do you hate us so much that you don't even want to have a reunion dinner with us? Her overbearing words put Yoon Yecheng in a difficult position. Unable to bear it any longer, Yoon Yeho rebuked, "Don't you always talk about borrowing money? Do you really think I don't know that you borrowed money from Yi Cheng behind my back? This money adds up to tens of thousands of yuan. Have you paid it back?" Seong-yu had been in the capital for a few months, and she hadn't learned anything else. However, her skin had grown thicker, and she grinned, "Isn't it because I'm short of money? Besides, we're all family. Is there a need to be so calculative?" Yoon Yeho, on the other hand, did not take it to heart. As the saying goes, even blood-related brothers should settle their accounts clearly. Yi Cheng has already spent a lot of energy taking care of me. Do you think he's made of iron? That's right. You don't need money to support the three of you. Chapter 2205. In a single sentence, the greed in his heart was as clear as day. Yoon Yeho was so exasperated that he almost burst into tears. He almost blurted out, "All of you, scram back to your hometown. If you don't have the capability, why are you all here in the capital?" Yoon Yecheng immediately stopped him, saying that they should not quarrel during the new year. After all, they were a family. Hence, he pulled Yoon Shusha to the side and said, "Shusha, I have a presumptuous request. Since it's New Year's Eve today, please invite your aunts over for a reunion dinner at noon. I don't want to make things difficult for you, but they seem to be clinging on to you and insist on having a family reunion dinner. Most importantly, I don't want to make things difficult for your uncle, so please invite them over for lunch to shut their mouths and prevent them from gossiping about you behind your back. After lunch, I'll send them back in a taxi." Yoon Shusha readily agreed. Lunch was supposed to be a family reunion, so it was not a demanding thing to invite them over for a meal. However, when Seong-yu and her daughter came, the festive atmosphere was diluted by a lot. Logically speaking, no matter how close a relative was, they should not come empty-handed. A carton of milk, a tin of biscuits, or even a small toy to coax the child should at least show their sincerity. Although Yoon Shusha did not care about their etiquette, she could tell from their actions that they were sincere. But when Seong-yu came to the door, not only did she come empty-handed, she didn't even bother to change her shoes as she barged straight into the house. "Wow. Shusha, where's your big villa? It's so grand. I saw it the moment I entered the house. Only the rich live here, right?" Seong-yu and her daughter had taken a taxi over, but they did not even have the time to pay for it. It was Yoon Yecheng who rushed over to pay for it after receiving a call. As soon as they entered the villa area, Seong-yu was shocked by the rows of elegant villas. They actually knew that Mu Yaja's net worth was not low, and his living conditions were superior. However, when they saw him living in such an expensive villa, the greed and passion in their eyes could not be concealed. Yoon Qingmiao and Yoon Chinli stepped through the door. Knowing basic etiquette, they exchanged a few greetings and New Year's blessings, changed their shoes, and were instantly captivated by the luxurious decor before them. Big sister Shusha, can we take a look at your villa? Yoon Chinli asked excitedly. Before Yoon Shusha could nod in agreement, Yoon Qingmiao grabbed Yoon Chinli's hand and eagerly rushed to each room for a look. They grew up in the countryside and were used to living in houses made of mud and bricks. When they came to Beijing, they lived in rented houses that were dozens of square meters. They had only seen such luxurious villas on TV. Therefore, once he saw it with his own eyes, that kind of shock and yearning was indescribable. Fortunately, Yoon Shusha had the foresight to lock the master bedroom and the two little guys' bedroom. Chapter 2206. Yoon Qingmiao was so jealous that her eyes were almost red. Just as Yoon Shusha walked over, the two sisters walked out in envy and asked, "Shusha, are all those beautiful clothes in such a big walk-in closet yours?" "Yes." Yoon Shusha nodded, and Yoon Chinli said enviously, "I'm so envious. There are so many clothes. If you change into one every day, it'll be enough for you to wear for a whole year." "You're exaggerating." Yoon Qingmiao snorted and then said flatteringly, "Shusha is rich. Even if you buy one every day, you can wear different clothes every day." Yoon Shusha's lips twitched. Her sister's compliment made her feel awkward. Many of the clothes were sent by sponsors. She had signed a contract with Louis Vuitton some time ago, so whenever Louis Vuitton released new designs, they would send her a few styles. There was a clause in the contract that stated that she had to wear the brand's clothes whenever she attended important events. In other words, many girls yearned to wear Louis Vuitton's clothes every day, but what about her? She clearly did not like it, but she was still forced to wear it when she went out. She could not voice her bitterness. She could not say it, though, or else the two sisters would say a few more words of jealousy. "You don't know how lucky you are." Just as Yoon Shusha closed the walk-in closet door, she saw Yoon Qingmiao and Yoon Chinli running upstairs, hand in hand. The villa was already renovated when it was handed over. Although she did not go upstairs often, it was already renovated. There was also a sky garden, which she often took care of. Soon, she could hear the exclamations of Yoon Qingmiao and Yoon Chinli from downstairs. "These flowers are so beautiful. It's good to live in a villa. It must cost a lot to buy such a spacious place, right?" "Tens of millions, of course. In a place like the capital, every inch of land is worth gold, and a villa is unreasonably expensive." Sigh. "That's why it's important to marry a good man. If Shusha didn't marry such a rich brother-in-law, would she be able to live in such a luxurious villa?" "That's right. For people like us, if we want to live in such a villa, I'm afraid we won't be able to earn so much money even if we spend our entire lives." Yoon Shusha stood downstairs, holding her forehead in pain. Why did she feel uncomfortable listening to these words that sounded like compliments? Yo-Yo and Xiaochen did not seem to be in high spirits either. Yoon Shusha felt even more guilty when she saw the unhappy expressions on the two little guys' faces. Mu Yaja heard the noise and walked out of the study. As soon as he walked out, he bumped into Xiong Yu, who was visiting the villa. He was stunned for a moment. "Auntie, Xiao Mu." Xiong Yu was the first to speak. "You look especially spirited in this dress today." Mu Yaja curled his lips into a lukewarm smile. His attitude was frigid as he turned to leave, ignoring him. Xiong Yu was rebuffed, her hot face stuck to a cold butt. She was embarrassed for a moment. Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen suddenly looked at each other and smiled slyly. They tacitly squeezed in front of Xiong Yu and cupped their fists together. "Granny, Happy New Year. May you prosper. Give us the red packets." They were here to ask for red packets from her. Xiong Yu's face turned green as she smiled awkwardly. If an adult were to say this, it would inevitably sound petty, but when it came from the mouths of two children, it felt more like a child's babble. Instead, she found it amusing and adorable. Naturally, she had to be generous when children asked for red packet. Chapter 2207. Besides, Yo-Yo and Xiaochen kept saying, "Happy New Year, Fat Fortune." How could she bear to reject them when they were so sweet-mouthed? Even if it was just for luck, she had to generously give them red packets. Xiong Yu, on the other hand, was stunned for a moment before her lips twitched uneasily. Who would have thought that these two children would ask for red packets in front of everyone? She originally thought that Yoon Shusha and Xiao Chen would not take the initiative to ask for red packets since they were young. Hence, she thought that she would just brush them off if she could. After all, she was already struggling to make ends meet recently. If not for the fact that she was really in a tight spot, why would she shamelessly come here to freeload on the reunion dinner? She had even shamelessly asked Yoon Yecheng to pay for her taxi fare. Were these two children deliberately making a fool of themselves by asking her for red packets at this time? She was at a loss as to what to do. Yo-Yo's face fell when he saw her standing there in a daze, unable to get a red packet out of her. He could not help feeling a little disappointed. Don't tell me that Grandma didn't prepare red packets for Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen. How stingy. Xiao Chen covered his mouth and chuckled before saying in disdain, Grandma, don't tell me that you can't even give us a few hundred yuan as red packets. It's New Year's Eve tonight. Not only did you come empty-handed, but you didn't even prepare red packets. Don't tell me you came here to freeload. The two little fellows echoed each other, and Xiong Yu's face was completely stripped bare. If it were Yoon Shusha who said such words, it would inevitably come off as harsh, unreasonable, and even mean. However, when it was these two little lads who said it, it made people laugh. While they laughed at the children's nonsense, they did not think that these two children were being rude. After all, Xiong Yu's every word and action were just like what these two little lads had said. It was obvious that they were here to freeload on the reunion dinner. She didn't even prepare a red packet for the child. It was inevitable that the child would despise her. Xiong Yu immediately squatted down in front of the two children and said awkwardly, It's not that I didn't prepare anything. I didn't bring any red packets with me. There was a traffic jam on the road. They came too hastily and were not prepared. It's all your fault. Don't blame me. Tomorrow, I'll prepare it for you, okay? So you didn't bring any red packets. Grandma, wait a moment. With a mischievous grin, he ran to the living room and pulled open a drawer to retrieve a stack of brand new red envelopes he had just bought from the supermarket. Taking out 2 envelopes, he ran to his mother and passed them to her. Here. Mu Yaja sat at the side, trying hard not to laugh. How could he not understand this little fellow's intentions? It was obvious that he didn't like Xiong Yu and her 2 daughters and wanted to embarrass them. He didn't give them a way out at all. How could Yo-Yo lack red packet money? But he just couldn't stand these 3 ungrateful wretches. Xiong Yu looked awkwardly at the red packets that Yo-Yo handed to her. She took them resentfully but didn't do anything else for a long time. What kind of joke was this? She only had $100 with her. Was she supposed to tear the $100 in half and give half to each child? This child looked so cute and innocent. How could he be so smart? Chapter 2208. She was so embarrassed that she wanted to cry. Xiao Chen suddenly said coldly, Yo-Yo, forget it. It's obvious that Granny didn't prepare anything. She's so poor that she can't even fork out 200 yuan. Xiong Yu's face turned red, as if blood was about to drip out of her mouth. Yo-Yo furrowed her brows in dissatisfaction. Granny doesn't care about us at all. She didn't even prepare a red packet for us. How sad. Yoon Yecheng and Yoon Yeho looked at each other, feeling like crying and laughing at the same time. As for Yoon Yeho, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, he felt extremely ashamed of his wife. He could not bear to see his wife being laughed at by the 2 children, so he quickly said, Yo-Yo, Xiao Chen, Grandpa has prepared red packets for you too. Come. Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen held hands as they walked to Yoon Yeho. They saw him sitting in his wheelchair and taking out 2 thick red packets from his canvas bag. He had secretly packed them beforehand. Ever since he came to the capital, his hometown would regularly send him subsidies despite his physical disability. Plus, he could not stay idle. When Yoon Yecheng went to work, he would do some handicrafts at home or do some simple chores. Thus, he managed to save up a small sum of money. The 2 red packets did not look thick, but they were a token of his sincerity. It was the new year, after all. Red packets should be given for the festive occasion. When Yoon Yecheng saw this, he immediately stopped him. Yeho, forget it. You don't have much money on you. Save it to buy something for yourself. It's enough that the two children know your sincerity. Oh, dear. Brother, it's the new year. Giving red packets to the children is more or less for the sake of happiness. It won't save much money. Yoon Yeho insisted on giving them a red packet. He pulled Yo-Yo and Xiao-Chen over and stuffed them into each of their hands with a smile. Yo-Yo glanced at Yoon Yeho's rough fingers, some of which were still wrapped in bandages. She didn't even need to think about how Yoon Yeho had earned all this money. Xiao-Chen was a little embarrassed to accept it, but Yo-Yo smiled and said, "Thank you, Grandpa. I wish Grandpa good health and a happy new year." As he spoke, he naturally stuffed it into his trouser pocket. When Xiao-Chen saw that Yo-Yo had accepted it, he accepted it as well. He smiled and gave his New Year's greetings. Since Yoon Yeho was the first to give a red packet, Yoon Yecheng naturally could not be left behind. He also gave the two kids a big red packet each. Yo-Yo and Xiao-Chen rushed to say their New Year's greetings and received the red packets. Xiao-Chen was the most adorable of them all. He even opened his father's red packet and stole a peek inside. Yo-Yo leaned over to take a peek. Xiao-Chen immediately covered his mouth and asked warily, "What are you doing? Take a look. It's not like I'm snatching it from you, petty fellow." Xiao-Chen smiled slyly and reached out to snatch his red packet. "Let me see yours first." "No way." The two kids were in a mess. Yoon Yecheng and Yoon Yeho burst into laughter and immediately said in unison, "You two little fools, we gave you the same amount of red packet." The atmosphere gradually warmed up. The awkwardness was finally resolved. However, after this display of strength, Seongyu finally restrained herself. She sat at the table and pretended that nothing had happened while munching on sunflower seeds. She finally knew her place. Yo-Yo could not stay idle for a while longer. He ran into the kitchen and prepared the reunion dinner with Yoon Shusha. Chapter 2209. The doorbell rang all of a sudden. Yoon Yecheng immediately stood up and was about to open the door when Mu Yaja pressed on his shoulder. "Dad, take a seat, I'll open the door." "Oh, okay." Feeling flattered, Yoon Yecheng smiled and sat down obediently as he was told. Mu Yaja walked to the entryway and opened the door, only to see Gong Jie standing outside. "Brother-in-law?" Gong Jie was a little surprised to see him opening the door. He raised a brow and greeted him naturally. Mu Yaja hummed in acknowledgement. Surprisingly, Gong Jie did not wear his trademark white windbreaker today. Instead, he wore a red shirt inside and a black coat outside. The coat was very long and went past his knees. Paired with a pair of straight, black slim-fit pants and a pair of black boots, he looked high-spirited, slender, and domineering. She didn't know if it was because it was a festive day, but his dark red shirt complemented his fair skin and deep eyes, making him look especially charming and cold. Few men could pull off a red shirt. With his hands in the pockets of his coat, he stepped in and scanned the living room. Although he was not familiar with the people sitting there, he still smiled. "Happy New Year. This is Shusha's younger brother, right?" Yoon Yecheng smiled. He had seen this young man once at Shusha's engagement party. As he looked too similar to Yoon Shusha, he had a deep impression of him. When Gong Jie saw him, he greeted him with a standard British gentleman's etiquette and smiled. "Hello, uncle, hello, hello, hello. Come, have a seat." Yoon Yecheng greeted him. "The reunion dinner isn't ready yet. Have some melon seeds and peanuts first." When Xiao-Chen saw Gong Jie, he immediately went up to him like a happy little bird. He jumped around him and chirped, "Uncle, Happy New Year, may you be prosperous. In other words, give me the red packet." Gong Jie was stunned for a moment. Then, he slapped his forehead heavily and lowered his head guiltily. He said in a remorseful tone, "Xiao Bao, uncle forgot to prepare the New Year's money. What should I do?" Boom. Xiao-Chen's face crumbled as if the sky and earth had split open. He pursed his lips, looking very unhappy. What he was looking forward to the most today was Gong Jie's red packet. Last night, Yo-Yo had secretly told him that Gong Jie was a super rich man. He was filthy rich and had a net worth of hundreds of millions. During the New Year last year, Gong Jie had sent Yo-Yo a red packet. The way he sent the red packet was simple and crude. This guy had directly transferred $10 million to Yo-Yo's account. Yu was taken aback at that time. 10 million, and in pounds. This was even better than winning the lottery. Xiao Ichen's eyes widened. Oh, God. He had never seen such a sizable red packet before. The biggest red packet he had received during the new year was from Mu Yaja. A few million was already an astronomical figure. Therefore, Xiao Ichen had been looking forward to Gong Jie's red packet. He had even prepared his bank account for it. In the end, Gong Jie told him that he had not prepared his New Year's money. Mu Chen's face darkened at once. Uncle is so stingy. Chapter 22:10. Gong Jie could not help but laugh as he carried the boy from behind and placed him on his lap. Mu Chen, however, did not want to bother with him. Crossing his arms, he turned his face away in a huff, refusing to look at him. Gong Jie deliberately teased him by kissing his rosy cheeks. Seeing that Mu Chen was not in a good mood and did not want to bother with him, he carefully squeezed his little hand and frowned slightly. Xiao Chen, are you angry? Uncle, you're so petty. Why should I bother with you when you didn't even prepare a red packet? Xiao Chen grumbled matter-of-factly. Coincidentally, Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli were coming down from upstairs. The two of them toured the villa, chatting as they went downstairs. However, just as they reached the living room, they saw Gong Jie sitting at the table with Xiao Chen in his arms. Their faces turned cold as if a basin of ice water had been poured over them. Yun Qingmiao, in particular, looked extremely ugly. Her memory of this man was still fresh in her mind. During Yun Shusha's engagement ceremony, she had wanted to get close to Gong Jie to inquire about his identity, but all she did was lightly touch his sleeve and this man mercilessly splashed wine all over her. This had practically become a shadow in her heart. The moment she saw this man, she shrunk her shoulders in fear and did not dare to go to the table. Instead, she hid in the living room like a coward. Yun Qinli, on the other hand, was natural and unrestrained as she went to the table and sat down beside her mother. Mom, shut up. Be quiet and don't talk nonsense. Her mother immediately warned her. Yun Qinli was naturally obedient. She obediently shut her mouth and didn't say anything more. On the other end, Gong Jie was still trying his best to coax Xiao Chen, but Xiao Chen seemed to be deliberately arguing with him and ignored him. Gong Jie was at his wit's end and could only take out a small and exquisite gift box from his pocket. He did not prepare a red packet because he felt that it was tacky. He had carefully prepared gifts for each of them. She had originally planned to give them the gifts after midnight on New Year's Eve. However, seeing Xiao Ichen's sullen face, she had no choice but to coax him. Little Ichen was sulking when he suddenly felt the man behind him raise his head and move his hand. The next moment, the man opened his palm in front of him, revealing an exquisite and small gift box. Yes, it's a New Year's gift for you. He coaxed gently. Little Ichen raised an eyebrow in surprise. He was clearly surprised. New Year's gift? Red packets are so tacky. The man's lips curled into a smile. I've prepared it for you. I think you'll like it. Xiao Chen's eyes lit up slightly. He took it curiously and couldn't wait to open it. However, from the corner of his eyes, he caught a glimpse of Gong Jie's playful gaze. Then, he cleared his throat and pretended to be reserved. What gift is this? Open it and take a look yourself. You'll know. Xiao Chen nodded and gently opened the gift box. Under everyone's gaze, Xiao Chen took out a gorgeous key from the gift box. The key ring had a retro design and was carved with the texture of a luxurious yacht. It was especially exquisite and delicate, and one could tell at a glance that it was handmade. The design of the key was also very unique. It was designed to look down on the yacht. On the back of the key was a string of words in English, the star. It was especially shiny. Chapter 22:11. In particular, there was a 1-carat diamond inlaid in the center of the tail, which was dazzling and mesmerizing under the light. Putting everything else aside, the rare diamond inlaid in the key alone was priceless. Yun Qinli and Xiong Yu were immediately dazzled by the diamond on the key. They didn't know what kind of key it was, but the dazzling diamonds on the key were an eye-opener for them. If the diamonds were real, they would be worth a lot of money. Is this Mu Chen's New Year's gift? Isn't it? A little too extravagant. Mu Chen was drooling uncontrollably. The Star was the world's top private yacht. This private yacht had only been launched 2 years ago after countless long construction periods. At that time, Gong-jie bought the ownership rights for £600 million. Everyone was curious about the luxury of the super-luxury yacht, and there were even many media outlets who followed it in a bid to see the world's top luxury yacht with their own eyes. The yacht was 170 meters long and had a wide hull. It was like a huge white castle on the sea, which fully illustrated the ambition and boldness of the yacht's builder. However, the yacht was not as luxurious as it seemed on the surface. Why didn't he take a look at the person who had bought the yacht? Just a yacht like this naturally couldn't meet his requirements. After Gong-jie bought the yacht, he towed it back to his shipyard and remodeled it. He even equipped it with excellent defense equipment. After some meticulous remodeling, its power was comparable to that of a battleship on the sea. Not only was it equipped with intruder detection and anti-detection systems, but it was also equipped with Germany's top missile defense system and a laser shield. The yacht was equipped with 2 helipads, many small speedboats and supply boats, as well as its own submarine and submarine cabin. The submarine could dive into the water at a depth of 160 feet, and could enter the cabin directly from the bottom of the yacht. Hence, its owner could board the yacht without anyone noticing. Gong-jie also hired an 80-person crew. The extravagant spending made Mu Chen dumbfounded. His eyes widened in disbelief. He often paid attention to the news about the Star, the world's most luxurious yacht. He had read about it before. He didn't expect the most luxurious yacht to be in his uncle's hands. Now, as a New Year's gift, his uncle actually gave him this yacht as a New Year's gift. Xiao Ichen was speechless. He narrowed his eyes faintly as the boy's drooling words echoed in his ears over and over again. Gong-jie is a super rich man, so rich that he's oozing with oil. His personal wealth was enough to buy many first-tier developed countries. He was very rich. Very rich. Rich. Money. Xiao Ichen was dumbstruck as he held the keys to the yacht in his hands. It was as if a pie had fallen from the sky and hit him so hard that he was disoriented. It was said that the yacht had been bought for £600 million. Including the cost of the modifications and equipment in the later stages, it would not be difficult to double the price. Even if it was £1 billion, how much would it be in RMB? Xiao Ichen did some calculations in his mind. Chapter 22:12. Why? You don't like it? I like it, I like it. Xiao Ichen nodded profusely as though he was afraid that Gong-jie would regret it and take it back. He quickly hugged the gift in his arms and giggled. He no longer looked cold and aloof as he hugged Gong-jie's neck and rubbed his handsome face intimately. Thank you, uncle, for the New Year's gift. I like it very much. As long as you like it. But, uncle, don't regret it. Since you've given it to me, you can't take it back. Xiao Ichen said cautiously. Gong-jie's lips twitched. He couldn't help but pinch the little guy's cheeks and said unhappily, Do I look like such a petty person? You do. Gong-jie was speechless. He suddenly reached out to snatch the gift back. Since you're saying that uncle is petty, then give it back to me. No. Xiao Ichen quickly protected him and jumped down from his body. He ran toward Mu Yaja and climbed onto his body. He hugged Mu Yaja and complained, Daddy, you have to protect me. Don't let uncle take my gift away. Gong-jie's eyebrows twitched violently as he gritted his teeth. This rascal. He didn't know how to be grateful at all. Didn't he know that this yacht was very expensive? Giving this yacht to this rascal was like cutting off a piece of his heart. He gave it to him, but he didn't even say a word of thanks. He even complained to his father. He just wanted to hear him say, Uncle is so generous. In the end, he said that he was petty. How could he not be angry? Mu Yaja facepalmed and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xiao Ichen, your uncle has plenty of money. He doesn't care about this yacht. Don't guard against him like he's a thief, okay? Gong-jie was speechless. Thief? His brother-in-law wasn't cute at all. Why were his words so unpleasant? What did he mean by guarding against a thief? When Yo-Yo heard the commotion in the living room, half of her head popped out from the kitchen. When she saw Gong-jie sitting at the table with a gloomy face, she exclaimed in surprise, "Uncle Gong, you're here." As soon as Xiao Chen saw Yo-Yo, he waved the yacht keys in his hand and flaunted, "Yo-Yo, look. Uncle gave me a luxurious yacht as a gift. Private luxury yacht." Yun Yeqing and Yun Yeho, while Xiong Yu and Yun Qinli were even more taken aback by this development. They were all curious as to what kind of gift Gong Jie had given the little guy. Mu Chen was so excited that he was dancing with joy. In the end, when they heard that it was a luxury yacht, everyone except Mu Yaja was dumbfounded. Yacht? Yun Qinli found it hard to believe. How could he really give him a yacht? At most, it should be a one replica, right? Mu Chen was such a young child. If he really gave him a luxurious yacht, it would be too extravagant. How rich did this person have to be so extravagant? Yun Yeqing, on the other hand, felt that Gong Jie's gift was too expensive. Regardless of whether the yacht was a replica or a real one, just the intricate diamond carvings on the keys were worth a fortune. Was such a gift not a little too expensive for a child? Yo-Yo shuddered when she heard that. Inwardly, she cursed Gong Jie for being so extravagant as to give Xiao Chen a yacht. She immediately walked up to Gong Jie, spread her hands, and asked with a smile, "Uncle, have you prepared my New Year's gift?" Chapter 22:13. Gong Jie glanced at Yo-Yo, only to see that the little guy was looking at him with sparkling eyes, as though he was looking at a rich old man. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Gong Jie couldn't help but feel hurt. He clutched his chest and said sadly, "I prepared gifts for you, but I'm being called stingy. Yo-Yo, hurry up and comfort my hurt heart." Upon hearing this, Yo-Yo immediately walked over, climbed onto his lap, and sat on his lap. His tender little hand gently stroked his chest as he consoled him seriously, "Good boy, don't be angry, don't be angry. Uncle, don't stoop to his level. He hasn't seen the world, but I have. I know that you're rich and generous, so I won't call you stingy." Yo-Yo's gentle consolation didn't heal Gong Jie at all. Instead, he wanted to vomit blood even more. These two nephews weren't cute at all. Gong Jie said stiffly, "I didn't prepare a gift for you." "Why?" Yo-Yo bit his tender little lips in grievance. He pointed at Xiao Chen and complained, "You gave him a luxurious yacht, but you didn't prepare a gift for me." Gong Jie gritted his teeth and grabbed his beautiful chin. He lowered his voice and said, "Little brat, the amount of money under your name isn't any less than mine. How dare you come here and suck my blood?" Yo-Yo's expression changed. He smiled slyly and pouted his pink lips. "Because you're my uncle. Why don't you call me Grandpa and I'll give you a yacht?" Gong Jie was speechless. Yo-Yo continued, "You have to know that I won't obediently address anyone who comes here just because they're related to me by blood. Uncle, don't pretend to be obedient after getting such a good deal. If you don't prepare my gift today, hey, this is my territory. Be careful, or I'll make things difficult for you." Pretending to be obedient after getting such a good deal? Gong Jie was so angry that he almost choked. "I'll call you Grandpa, and you'll give me the ancient castle that you bought from the auction. How about that?" "Sure, call me that if you dare." Gong Jie immediately called out, "Grandpa." Yo-Yo was speechless. The little kid's face turned green. He said fiercely, "How shameless." Gong Jie playfully stuck his tongue out. Then, he rubbed his head lovingly and smiled. "All right, I won't tease you anymore. I've also prepared a New Year's gift for my son." "What gift?" Gong Jie whispered into his ear, "Haven't you been eyeing Victoria Island, which I bought last year?" "I'll give it to you." "Of course, yo, of course, of course." Gong Jie hummed in response. "Are you touched? Uncle is so generous. I love you so much." Yu hugged his shoulders and cheered excitedly, beaming from ear to ear. Gong Jie said proudly, "Aren't you going to express your gratitude to Uncle?" Without hesitation, Yo-Yo lifted Gong Jie's chin with one hand. His tender little face slowly inched closer to his handsome face. Then, he gracefully kissed his thin lips and said, "Thank you." This was his way of expressing intimacy with Yun Shusha. It had become a habit. However, Gong Jie was shocked by this intimate kiss. He widened his eyes and touched his lips with his fingers. He was a little surprised. "Yo-Yo, you're taking the opportunity to molest me." Gong Jie complained. Chapter 22:14. Gong Jie retorted coldly, "So, your way of thanking me is to steal my first kiss?" Tired face. Yo-Yo sucked in a breath of cold air. His eyes widened in shock as he stared at him in disbelief. Clearly, he was doubtful of his words. So, Yo-Yo suddenly inched closer to him and said teasingly, "Uncle is still a pure and innocent little virgin?" T. Gong Jie's face turned red. He was so embarrassed that he looked like he was about to bleed. He said in all seriousness, "Uncle has been on the battlefield since he was young. I've been to many battles and have given pointers." T. Yo-Yo covered his mouth and snickered. "Giving pointers? Giving pointers to you?" Gong Jie was beyond embarrassed. He was in his 20s, yet he was being mocked by a 7-year-old boy. He couldn't take it lying down. Gong Jie glanced at Yo-Yo, who couldn't stop snickering, and said coldly, "I'm not going to stoop to your level." He, stubborn. You mocked him. Suddenly, he thought of something and shook his head. "No wonder I sensed an ascetic aura from you the first time I saw you in person. It turns out that uncle is so pure. Come, do you want me to teach you how to kiss? Go away." Gong Jie pushed him away in disdain. However, Yo-Yo seemed determined to tease him. He wrapped his arms around his neck and pouted, wanting to kiss his thin lips. "Little Jie, you're here." Yun Shusha's voice suddenly rang out. Yo-Yo stopped in his tracks. Both he and Gong Jie looked back and saw Yun Shusha standing at the kitchen door, smiling like a flower. "You're just in time. Dinner is about to be served." With that, Yun Shusha went back into the kitchen. Yo-Yo shot him a look. "Why aren't you helping Mommy?" Gong Jie replied with a then stood up and went to the kitchen. In the kitchen, Yun Shusha was seriously preparing the soup. She put in a spoonful of chicken essence and scooped up a mouthful of soup. She carefully blew on it and gently took a sip to taste it. Seeing this, Gong Jie's eyes could not help but curve into a gentle smile. Following that, he silently moved closer to her and suddenly reached out his hand to hug her waist from behind. He gently rested his chin on her shoulder. Yun Shusha was startled. She turned around and saw that it was Gong Jie. She heaved a sigh of relief and said angrily, "Shou Jie, why didn't you make a sound when you walked in? You're like a cat." "That's because big sister is too focused." Gong Jie glanced at her hand. "Are you making soup?" "Yes. Do you want to try the pork rib soup?" Gong Jie nodded, looking very expectant. Just as Yun Shusha was about to start, Gong Jie suddenly reached out and held her hand. He took a small spoonful from the spoon in her hand and gently took a sip. Suddenly, his eyes lit up unexpectedly. "Not bad." "What do you mean not bad?" Yun Shusha protested. Hey, aren't you underestimating me? Is my cooking as bad as you think? I've never tried your cooking before. This is probably the first time, right?" Yun Shusha was the most annoyed. "What do you mean by the first time? I used to cook noodles for you when we were young." Gong Jie broke out in a cold sweat and said coldly, "Instant noodles count? Why doesn't instant noodles count? You don't even know how to cook instant noodles." Gong Jie was speechless. "Please, that was because he was lazy." Gong Jie said again, "Give me a piece of pork rib to try." Chapter 22:15. Yun Shusha nodded and carefully picked up a piece of pork rib with her chopsticks. She carefully held it in her hands and blew on it gently, afraid that the pork rib would scald him. "Be careful, it's hot." Gong Jie was envious and was about to take a bite out of it. Suddenly, a broad palm appeared out of nowhere and pushed him to the side. Before Yun Shusha could react, she saw a tall figure slowly approaching from the corner of her eye. Mu Yaja had entered the kitchen and pushed Gong Jie aside. He calmly held Yun Shusha's wrist and naturally put the pork rib into his mouth. Yun Shusha's lips twitched. Gong Jie came back to his senses and looked up. He saw Mu Yaja holding Yun Shusha's shoulders. His mouth was moving as he looked at him warily. When did he come in? Recalling the push just now, it must have been this fellow. Mu Yaja saw Gong Jie enter the kitchen and quickly followed him. When he reached the entrance of the kitchen, he saw a certain man openly holding his woman's waist and leaning his head on her shoulders. Although this man was his legitimate brother-in-law, He found this scene extremely annoying no matter how he looked at it. Hence, just when Yun Shusha was about to feed him the pork rib, Mu Yaja walked over and pushed Gong Jie away. He leaned forward and pulled Yun Shusha into his arms as if declaring his sovereignty. When Gong Jie saw this, he narrowed his eyes slightly and snorted coldly. "Brother-in-law, what are you doing?" Mu Yaja said righteously, "I'm here to help." Help? Who would believe that? He obviously didn't want to see him being too intimate with his sister. Gong Jie gritted his teeth. This was the reason why he didn't want his sister to get married. Out of nowhere, another man appeared in his sister's world and fought with him for his sister's love. More importantly, this fight was perfectly justified. He had no room to refute. Gong Jie felt particularly unbalanced. He glanced at Mu Yaja, only to see him sizing him up as if he was looking at an invader. The two men glared at each other like tigers eyeing their prey. In the air, electric currents couldn't help but collide. Like electric sparks, they faced off in an invisible confrontation. Yun Shusha broke out in a cold sweat. She picked up 2 pieces of pork ribs with her chopsticks and stuffed them into each of their mouths. Then, she pushed the 2 of them out. "Go back to your seats and sit down. Don't get in the way here. Madam, sister." Bang. The kitchen door slammed shut. The 2 men were given the cold shoulder at the same time. They resentfully turned their faces and looked at each other in disgust. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen sat at the side, the corners of their lips twitching. Then, they looked at each other and gave each other a look. The 2 little fellows walked over and each of them hooked their arms around a man's arm. Xiao Ichen hooked her arm around Mu Yaja's arm and pushed him back to the table. She urged, "Daddy, stop messing around. You're going to be a burden if you go to the kitchen to help. Be good and sit down." Yo-Yo pulled Gong Jie to sit opposite Mu Yaja and reminded him, "Uncle, be good and sit down. Dinner will be served soon." With that, the 2 little fellows hooked their arms around each other's shoulders and went into the kitchen to help. Chapter 22:16. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen served a sumptuous spread of delicacies to the table. "Let's eat." The table was filled with laughter. Yun Shusha poured wine for Yun Yeqing and Yun Yeho. As for the mother-daughter pair, they behaved themselves and ate in silence. Yun Qinli was the tactful one. Occasionally, she would chime in with a few pleasing words and quickly immerse herself in the joyous atmosphere. Halfway through the drinking session, Gong Jie and Mu Yaja started a fight. The 2 men sat opposite each other and downed an entire bottle of white wine. Of course, Gong Jie was the first to start the fight. He first poured half a glass of white wine and raised a brow in Mu Yaja's direction. Then, he raised his wrist and offered a toast. That look was undoubtedly a blatant provocation. There was no reason for Mu Yaja not to accept his brother's toast. After all, he was the older one. Besides, how could he have stage fright when his brother-in-law offered a toast? Thus, the 2 men drank 1 glass after another and downed more than 2 catties of white wine. The rest of the group was stunned by the sight. What was even more shocking was that the 2 did not show any signs of drunkenness even after downing 2 liters of wine. If it were Yun Yeqing and Yun Yeho, they would have long been so drunk that they would have collapsed on the table and lost consciousness by now. These 2 men, on the other hand, downed more than 2 catties of white wine. 2 bottles of white wine were almost empty, and only then did Gong Jie and Mu Yaja seem to be in the mood to drink. What a joke! Gong Jie's alcohol tolerance over the years was not for nothing. He still remembered that time when he was trapped in a war zone with a group of mercenaries from Russia. Along the way, when he was tired or sleepy, he would drink some vodka to perk himself up. Those Russians were especially ruthless. Sometimes, when they ran out of vodka, they would go to the medical team to get some medical alcohol, mix it with water, and gulp it down. After many years of training, his alcohol tolerance was quite impressive. What about Mu Yaja? Naturally, he would not admit defeat. He had experienced many such situations since he was young, whether it was a dinner party or a drinking party. When he was very young, he started drinking alcohol. His alcohol tolerance was trained since he was young. First, he drank red wine. Slowly, he moved on to white wine, vodka, and many other strong liquors. Therefore, when he and Gong Jie were placed together, Their alcohol tolerance was about the same. Neither of them was giving way to the other. Yo-Yo watched from the side with a guilty conscience. These two guys didn't drink in small sips. They either didn't drink or drank it all in one go. Wasn't this combat power too terrifying? Could it be that this white wine was mixed with water? With this question in mind, Yo-Yo curiously picked up the wine glass when Muyaja wasn't paying attention. She licked the white wine with her little tongue. She had only touched a drop when she suddenly choked on it. It was so spicy that she rolled her eyes and clicked her tongue for a long time. Her face instantly turned red from the spiciness. Ha ha ha. Yoon Yecheng was amused and deliberately teased her. Yo-Yo, does the wine taste good? Yoon Yeho could not help but laugh. You're so young, yet you want to learn how to drink like an adult. You're really promising. It suddenly started snowing outside the window. The snowfall was a little sudden and rushed. In just a short while, a thin layer of snow had accumulated on the ground, trees, and roof. In just a short while, the snow had become much thicker. Chapter 22:17. As they walked past, they left a trail of footprints of varying depths. Xiangti Walk was a retro castle-designed villa and bungalow. After the snow fell, it felt like a fairy tale world. Xiao Ichen pointed out the window excitedly and exclaimed, "Wow! It's snowing! It's snowing! We can have a snowball fight later." Yo-Yo pretended to be reserved and ate quietly. Xiao Ichen suddenly tugged at his sleeve and encouraged him. "Yo-Yo, let's play in the snow." "Mph, I don't want to play such a childish game with you," Yo-Yo said proudly. However, even though he said that, he ate faster. Only God knew how much he looked forward to having a snowball fight. In the past, when it snowed in winter, Yoon Shusha would not allow him to go out and play in the snow. After all, his body was weak. If he went out to play in the snow, he would catch a cold and catch a cold. With little Munchin's physique, it would take at least half a month for him to recover. Moreover, it was boring to play in the snow alone. Even so, when it snowed, the little guy was still very excited. Hence, Yo-Yo would sneak out behind Yoon Shusha's back. Even if he hid in a corner and built a small snowman, he would still be satisfied. After the reunion dinner, Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen pestered Gong Jie to build a snowman outside the house. Dragging Gong Jie along was not enough. Yo-Yo insisted on bringing Muyaja along to have a snowball fight. Muyaja was silent. He sized up the two little guys who were eyeing him covetously. Who was the one who said not to play such a childish game like a snowball fight? Sensing Muyaja's teasing and playful gaze, Yo-Yo, who had just put on his gloves and hat, glanced at him. Then, he blushed and cleared his throat. In a serious tone, he said, "Xiao Ichen wants to play. I'm just accompanying him." This seemingly perfect excuse was met with disdain from Gong Jie and Xiao Ichen. Xiao Ichen said in disdain, "Yo-Yo, I think you want to have a snowball fight too. If you want to play, just say it." "What do you mean by playing with me?" Yo-Yo's face turned even redder. "Shut up. Who said I wanted to play? Weren't you the one who kept encouraging me to have a snowball fight? Didn't I do it to accompany you?" What a pretentious excuse. Xiao Ichen blurted out an idiom. "You obviously want to play. Who said so? I'm just playing with you. It's you who wants to play." Just like that, the two little guys bickered and led Gong Jie and Muyaja out to play in the snow. Yoon Shusha couldn't help but worry. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen knew their limits. Muyaja and Gong Jie wouldn't turn a simple snowball fight into a bloody war, would they? She couldn't help but shudder. Yoon Yecheng and Yoon Yeho were already half drunk. Yoon Shusha helped them up to the guest room on the second floor to rest. When she went downstairs, she saw Seongyu standing at the staircase, looking at her uneasily as if she had something to say to her. "Auntie, is something the matter?" "Shusha, it's like this." Chapter 22:18. "I don't have enough red packets for the children this year, but I'll definitely make up for it next year." Yoon Shusha was stunned for a moment before her lips curled up. "Red packets are just a way to express our sincerity and happiness. Don't take it to heart. I'm already very touched that you're so understanding." As she spoke, she suddenly sized her up cautiously and asked in a roundabout manner, "Shusha, Did your father buy this villa? Chem. Yoon Shusha shook her head and smiled. My husband bought this villa. He originally planned to use it as our wedding home, but he said that it's too stingy to use it as a wedding home. Her nonchalant words set off waves of shock in Seong-yu's heart. Yoon Chinli and Yoon Qingmiao, who were sitting at the side, also pricked up their ears to eavesdrop on the couple's conversation. When they heard Yoon Shusha casually say that this villa was too stingy to use as a wedding home, they could not help but feel envious. This villa was small. It was more than 300 square meters in size, not including the 2 basement floors. With 4 floors and a small attic, there were a total of 8 rooms. It would not be a problem for 4 generations to live under the same roof. How could a newlywed's wedding home be called small? Wasn't her tone a little too arrogant? Yoon Qingmiao could not help muttering secretly, what does this brother-in-law do for a living? Why is he so rich? To be able to hold such a grand wedding on a private island, brother-in-law must have a powerful background. Is there a need to ask? With so much money, this villa is nothing to him. Things that are valuable to us are as light as a feather in his eyes, said Yoon Chinli. Yoon Qingmiao's eyes turned redder as she bit her lower lip hard. Sometimes, some things were really unfair. It was really unfair. How much did Yoon Qingmiao yearn for such a villa? It had 4 floors above ground and 2 basement floors, including the attic. It was a spacious villa with a garden, and the luxurious decor was unbelievably beautiful. Such a villa was located on a piece of land where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. If she wanted to own it, she would not be able to touch it even if she spent her entire life. Yoon Shusha, on the other hand, had easily obtained all of this. Why? Wasn't it because she had married a rich husband? If brother-in-law wasn't so rich, with Yoon Shusha's standard, how could she afford to live in such a high-end villa area? Yoon Chinli was also very jealous. If she could stay in such a villa for a night, she would be very happy. She felt that the girl who lived in such a villa was like a high and mighty princess, elegant and arrogant. However, she could only imagine all of this. You think this villa is too small? Seong-yu said enviously. This villa is already very big. You two are newlyweds, and it's already very spacious for you two to live together with your 2 children. There's no need to buy more, right? The new house has already been decided. Mu Yaja has already made arrangements. Before the wedding, they will probably move to the new house. New home. When Seong-yu heard this, her eyes widened slightly. She asked curiously, has your new home been decided? Yes. Where? Cloudy Mountain, Shiyi. Cloudy Mountain, Shiyi. Yoon Qingmiao suddenly stood up in agitation. Yoon Chinli glanced at her and found her agitation abnormal. What's wrong? Chapter 22:19. Surprised, Seong-yu asked, how did you know? Yoon Qingmiao replied, because I know a celebrity who's staying there. I heard that she spent hundreds of millions to buy a mansion in Yunshan, Shiyi. Some reporters snuck into the villa and took a few shots. It's really beautiful. Hearing this, Seong-yu was speechless. Yoon Shusha curled her lips expressionlessly and said, Yunshan Shiyi is a property that Yaja personally developed. Since this villa has a special meaning to him, we probably won't be moving after we move in. Yunshan Shiyi was located on a mountain with excellent feng shui. The environment was elegant and charming, and the scenery was picturesque. Previously, the Mu Group had spent a huge sum of money to pave a mountain road for ease of transportation. Now that the underground tunnel was about to be completed, it should be much more convenient to travel from the city. Seong-yu pressed, what about the villa here? It's probably vacant for the time being. Vacant? Seong-yu bit her lip regretfully and sighed. It's such a pity for such a beautiful villa. Actually, there was a hidden meaning in her words. She was hinting to Yoon Shusha that it would be a pity for such a beautiful villa to be vacant and unoccupied. It was not for sale or rent. Since it was vacant, it was better for them to live in it. This way, they could save a sum of money on rent, right? However, Seong-yu was tactful and could not say this out loud, lest she appear too thick-skinned. Hence, she could only beat around the bush and remind Yoon Shusha to take the initiative to invite them to move into the villa. Yoon Shusha was smart enough to understand what Seong-yu meant, but she pretended not to understand and smiled. He has many properties under his name, and most of them are vacant. He might auction off a few of them in the future. Yoon Chinli suddenly asked curiously, Sis Shusha, what does brother-in-law do for a living? He's also rich. With so many properties under his name and such a huge villa, his net worth should be hundreds of millions, right? Yoon Shusha only smiled and turned around to clear the table. Seong-yu glared at them. In front of Yoon Shusha, she pretended to be exasperated and said, Qingmiao, Chinli, learn more. Don't just be envious of how happy Shusha is now. She also suffered a lot back then. Now that her life is better, it's all because she has a good eye for people and married such an outstanding person like your brother-in-law. So, when you guys are dating, keep your eyes open and find a good match. In the future, you can live a good life like Shusha. Yoon Shusha's movements suddenly stiffened. On the surface, Seong-yu's flattering words fell into her ears, but they were especially unpleasant. What she was implying was that the reason she could live such a good life was all because of men, but what made her uncomfortable was that she made it sound as if she had chosen to marry Muyaja because of his wealth. But in reality, no matter if it was poor, rich or poor, even if it was just a small house, she would be satisfied. The definition of home was not how big it was. Instead, it was home where she could see the person she loved and live in harmony and warmth. That was her ideal home. Yoon Qingmiao and Yoon Chinli were still saying enviously, Sis Shusha is so lucky to be able to meet such a perfect man like brother-in-law. Chapter 22:20. Yoon Shusha turned around and smiled sweetly all of a sudden. I'm indeed very lucky. The man I love loves me back. This is a blessing that many people can only wish for. How can love alone be enough? Love is important, but material things are also indispensable. Yoon Qingmiao said matter-of-factly. As the saying goes, all things are sad for a poor couple. When looking for a man, it's better to pick one with good qualities. Her mother chimed in. Shusha, look, Qingmiao isn't young anymore. She's older than you. Your child is already 7 years old, but she's still single. Why don't you take a look and introduce a good man to us? Yoon Qingmiao stomped her feet in embarrassment. Mom, what are you talking about? Despite her coquettish expression, she was actually looking forward to it. Putting everything else aside, just any one of Muyaja's circle of friends was a suitable candidate. If she could hook up with a man of noble status like Muyaja, she would not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of her life. She would be able to live a life of luxury just like Yoon Shusha. Yoon Qingmiao's plan was shrewd and ruthless. Yoon Shusha, however, merely smiled and said, it's not difficult to find a man with good qualities. Yaja's friends are all very outstanding. That's pretty good. Her mother said excitedly. Shusha, you have to help us. It'll be even better if you can matchmake him and introduce him. The point is. Yoon Shusha suddenly hesitated. The point is. Yoon Qingmiao and Seong-yu stared at her nervously. Yoon Shusha said venomously, the point is that even if you like him, he might not like you. Yoon Qingmiao was dealt a heavy blow. Her face turned ashen as she clenched her fists tightly and bit her lip indignantly. Seong-yu asked awkwardly, Shusha, how can you say that? Yoon Shusha raised her eyebrows but did not think much of it. She said, he doesn't like just any woman. First of all, she has to be good-looking, have big breasts, and have a perky butt. Second of all, she has to be cultured, have a high education, have a good family background, and have a good upbringing. Third of all, she has to be able to throw herself at him. Otherwise, why would someone as outstanding as him take a fancy to you? Seong-yu was speechless for a while. Her face turned red because of Yoon Shusha's words. She wanted to refute, but Yoon Shusha continued, it's not wishful thinking to have an excellent partner. However, if he wasn't outstanding enough and had such high standards, he had to be handsome, come from a good family, and be rich and powerful. Would such an outstanding man lack fans by his side? Could it be that he couldn't do it? This was not a fairy tale. Even if Cinderella married the prince in the end, it was because she was beautiful enough, gentle, and kind enough. Instead of racking her brains to climb up the social ladder, it's better to think about how to become an outstanding lady. With that, she smiled elegantly and enunciated each word clearly. Qingmiao, Don't be envious of anyone. Happiness doesn't come from nowhere. You have to fight for it yourself. With that, Yoon Shusha slowly brought the bowls and chopsticks into the kitchen. Yoon Qingmiao tried her best to maintain her composure, but her anger could not be quelled. Her chest heaved up and down. After a moment of silence, she lowered her voice and said, "Ridiculous. You married a rich man, yet you don't allow others to have such thoughts." Chapter 22-21. Yoon Qingmiao, who was already upset, was instigated by Yoon Qinli's words. With nowhere to vent her anger, she could not help raising her voice. Didn't she say that women should be independent? What about me, though? Didn't I rely on my brother-in-law to live such a good life? Would she be able to live in such a beautiful villa on her own? Can I have so many beautiful clothes to wear? Don't you rely on your man? Why are you indirectly mocking me for wanting to marry into a good family? Am I not worthy of marrying into a rich family? In the kitchen, Yoon Shusha frowned when she vaguely heard Yoon Qingmiao's disgruntled mutterings. The biggest conflict between women was jealousy. She was not angry at all, though. The only reason others were jealous of her was that she was outstanding and lucky enough. Moreover, Yoon Qingmiao was right. Mu Yaja had indeed sacrificed a lot for her. Everything she had, including Yo-Yo, was a blessing bestowed upon her by this man. She was grateful and cherished it from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps, in the past, she felt a little ashamed of her inferiority when she stood in front of him. She worked hard to become more outstanding so that she could be worthy of him. However, that was only because of her pride. Now, she did not think so much. She believed that women should be independent, but that was before Mu Yaja existed. God created men and women, and there was no such thing as equality between men and women. Men had more innate advantages over women, be it in strength, ability, or responsibility. Women, on the other hand, were gentler and more delicate than men. The two were interdependent in the first place. Women should be independent, but if a man was outstanding and responsible enough, it was better for them to rely on and trust him with peace of mind. Women yearned for such reliance. Men, on the other hand, relied on such reliance. She smiled nonchalantly and turned on the tap to wash the dishes. Yoon Qingmiao heard the sound of running water coming from the kitchen, and her emotions became more complicated. She clenched her fists tightly and pursed her lips in grievance. Her mother said, "What do you know? This is called a sense of superiority. Shusha's life is better now. She married a good husband, entered a rich family, and has a pair of adorable xiao bao. This is a classic example of a mother relying on her children to rise in status, but I think she won't be able to enjoy such blessings for long. She's no different from those nouveau riche when she's so arrogant. Isn't she just a little lucky?" Yoon Qinli added, "Poor us, we can only be envious. Mom, look, we're here to be bullied. She may seem low-key on the surface, but isn't she just flaunt in disguise? She's just saying that to show us how outstanding she is." Her mother Qinli. "Okay, don't let her hear you." Yoon Qingmiao grumbled unhappily, "That's how it is. Qinli didn't say anything wrong. She even said something like, 'Why would someone so outstanding like you? Why don't you take a look at yourself? Brother-in-law is so outstanding, why would he like her? Because she's Yoon Shusha.'" Mu Yaja's cold voice was suddenly heard from the door. The mother-daughter trio jerked their heads up in shock, only to see Mu Yaja at the door. Chapter 22-22. Originally, the door was left ajar and was not closed at all. The two lads were having fun playing in the snow outside. Now that the snow was getting heavier, Gong Jie teamed up with the two lads to have a snowball fight. In the end, they were beaten by Xiao Chen, whose fighting prowess was off the charts. Mu Yaja originally did not want to participate, but Yo-Yo coquettishly asked him to join in the fun. He and Mu Yaja would be on the same team, while Xiao Chen and Gong Jie would be on the same team. Gong Jie was satisfied with that and encouraged him to join in as well. Mu Yaja simply decided to come back to get a pair of gloves and join the battlefield. However, just as he reached the door, he heard the trio's discussion. His hearing was very sharp, so he immediately heard Yoon Qingmiao's jealous mutterings. Thus, he stood at the door and coldly sized them up. He did not hide his disgust at all. The trio saw him standing at the door as if he had heard all their complaints about Yoon Shusha. For a moment, they felt extremely embarrassed. Yoon Qingmiao, in particular, stood up nervously and looked at him in trepidation. She shrunk her shoulders and blushed. "Brother-in-law, when did you come in?" She shrunk behind Seong Yu's back, obviously feeling very guilty. She did not know how much of her words had been heard by this man, so she felt guilty. Mu Yaja coldly pursed his thin lips and then slowly took a few steps toward them. When he was about 3 to 4 meters away from them, he stopped and slowly walked out. "I don't like anyone talking about my wife behind her back, even if it's someone close to her. Gossiping like this is very annoying." These were not particularly harsh words, but coming from Mu Yaja's mouth, they were full of mockery and disgust. There was a faint murderous aura and an overbearing aura. Yoon Qingmiao's body swayed a little, and she almost lost her balance. "You dote on my sister so much, don't spoil her. We shouldn't talk about her, but she was the one who, whether I dote on her or not, it's not up to you to stand here and criticize, right?" Mu Yaja curled his lips coldly and said in disgust, "You're not welcome here." Scram. "Brother-in-law, shut up." Mu Yaja's cold and indifferent eyes fell on them, his tone not allowing them to object. Feeling guilty, Yoon Qingmiao swallowed the words that were about to rush out of her mouth. She took a deep breath and looked at the tightly shut kitchen door. She did not know where the courage came from, but it could be due to extreme jealousy or displeasure in some aspect. But she snapped, "Why should I? Wasn't this too unfair? What right did she have to put on such a high and mighty attitude, like a spoiled princess who was pampered in the palm of someone's hand? And we're just complaining. Is there no room for negotiation? Moreover, what did I say wrong? How was she outstanding? She gave birth to a child at the age of 18 and got pregnant before marriage. She's such a pair of broken shoes and doesn't know how to behave. What's there to be proud of?"